right. Well, looks like the crowd is gathering. That's really exciting. We'll get started in just a minute. Yeah, it's awesome. It's the number is skyrocketing. This is awesome. Love it. Love it. So for our attendees, we're going to get started in, let's give it 1 minute and then we'll get this thing going.
Oh, coming to hear you, Andy.
They are not coming to hear me, Doug. And that's good because I don't want to be the front man. Some people may question whether that's true or not, but that is 100% true.
Nobody better than Andy.
If you came to hear me, you're here for the wrong reason, and you're going to be woefully disappointed. But I will facilitate the right people talking to the right people all day long. All right, well, let's get started. We got quite a group and it's awesome to have you guys. Thank you for joining. For my panelists, just a sound check. Everything coming through fine?
You sound great, Andy.
Sound good, Andy.
And you look good too, buddy.
You're looking good, baby.
I've got the TV on above me and the light over here trying to hide as many wrinkles as I can. I don't have an attic like Jed that's been turned into a studio. Jed, it is an attic or was an attic, right?
Well, exactly. We moved down the street. I'm out of the attic.
Okay. I'm in a hotel room in Orlando, Florida, sunny Orlando. It is actually beautiful as usual here. We're doing a hockey game tonight. We did one earlier in the week down in Fort Lauderdale. Great example of what XenTegra tries to bring to the community, not only information, but some fun. And, when XenTegra was founded, that was kind of the idea. Let's get people together. Let's add value all at the same time. And that's a great example of this Disrupt event. As many of you guys know, Igel did a roadshow of Disrupt events a few months ago, which was great, but it was limited, right? You can only go to so many cities. We went to Igel with the idea, let's do 1, 2, 3, or 4 of these in Canada. And because of the current situation in our world, we all decided to do it online, and extremely happy to have you guys here today to be part of that. And we will do an in-person Disrupt roadshow again, probably sometime in this first quarter, maybe end of first quarter, beginning of second quarter. So March, April timeframe. So keep an eye on that. That is absolutely coming, as Doug alluded to in our conversations prior to turning on the webinar, as well as in some of his other conversations. We are extremely anxious to get out and be with you guys again in the field. And nobody does that more. Nobody does that better and with the greatest intent on adding value and being social than we'll say Igel, for sure Igel, and we'll highlight that around Jed Ayers and his desire to really add value to the community, which all that's going to be highlighted here. So here's our agenda for the day. I'm going to get out of the way here in just a few minutes. I've probably rambled more than I should already. Jed's going to jump in and we're going to do a keynote similar to the Igel keynotes that were done in the in-person events. Doug Brown is with us in person, as well as several of the guys from the community. That's exciting because at first we thought Doug was going to have to record a video. He did a video. I watched it earlier, grabbed my popcorn, watched it. It was awesome, but we're going to have him do it live. Our friend and my original Igel connection, Jeff Kalberg, is here, and Jeff's going to give us a technical update on current Igel as well as a roadmap. And then Chris Feeney and Ron Nair are going to jump in, and they are going to help us with a visual, an Igel demo, which if you're not seeing Igel in person, firsthand, touching the keys, toggling between this receiver and that receiver without having to change the firmware on the device, which is my story. That's how I became an Igel fan. You're missing it, because Igel's solution, both from OS perspective, Linux, read-only layered Linux OS solution, as well as the management console, is a game changer for people in the EUC, as well as people just using SaaS application space. And then we're going to wrap it up with some Q&A and go from there. All right, I'll make this one quick. I guess I should never make it quick. I should focus on what it is XenTegra does, but I know we got a lot to cover here today. XenTegra is a value-added reseller. We offer consulting services. We offer managed services. I am shocked at the amount of managed services that are growing within our business, whether it's print server management, whether it's Citrix management, which is probably the one that happens the most. Igel, as a managed service, Nutanix as a managed service. I could go on and on and on. The reality in our world is the amount of employees are limited that have the skills. XenTegra has a managed service practice, which is solving a lot of problems for people. And I couldn't be more proud of what the team there is doing, helping customers implement and manage and maintain solutions. We also do a lot of complementary things. I've got a note here in a minute, the podcast that we do, but we do assessments all the time. We probably do 3 or 4 a week. These are one-day assessments looking at your Citrix, your Microsoft, your VMware environments, all the above individual assessments. And those are complementary. And I'm a former sysadmin that back in the day would just love for someone to, one, take me to a conference, which some of you guys know it's a big part of our story, as well as somebody just to come take a look at my environment, not expecting me to have to buy anything from them, but just give me a second opinion, because I know my stuff was a mess. I needed a friend, and I had one guy, me, on my team that had a clue what the stuff I was working on and how it worked. Simple message: build a community, build a business that helps that community, and you've got a business for a life. And that's what XenTegra does around our core technology: Citrix, VMware, Microsoft, Nutanix, ServiceNow, and Igel, as well as many, many others. In preparation for this, I thought I would just throw out the number of years experience that XenTegra has around end user computing. I have been using the number 300 for a couple of years, and I think, well, maybe I should actually recalculate that now that the team has grown. 716. I was shocked. I thought we'd be 200 or 300 still. 716 years of end user compute. If you want to quantify XenTegra with a number, that's it. Things we do: podcasts. Chris Feeney, who's on the call here, and I do a weekly Igel podcast. If you don't have XenTegra searched for in your podcast app on your phone, give that a shot. I promise you it is valuable content. I love doing it because I probably learn more through those podcasts than any other method. Truth is, I don't have enough time to read all the blogs. So Chris and I and others find podcasts or blogs that are relevant, and we review those and have a great discussion around the podcast each week. Here's the micro assessments we do. If you're one of our customers or a potential customer, let us come take a look at what you're doing. No obligations. There won't be a salesperson on the call. It'll be one of our sales engineers just trying to figure out how you're using the technology, the things that are working, the things that are probably definitely could be optimized, things that are right, things that are wrong, things that are possibly wrong. What I love doing the most is finding things that are not necessarily right, but could be right for your environment, but just trying to ask you, why is it set up this way? Often there's a really good answer. Sometimes it's, well, I don't know. That's how the consultant set it up. Let us take a look and just give you a second opinion. I love giving stuff away. If you've been around us long enough, we give away t-shirts. We do all these events and things we do. About a year ago, we said, hey, let's give away something really fun. So we've got a Ford Bronco. I've been promising to give this thing away. This is very much in the image of what Igel and Jed have done around the Teslas. I'm going to give one of these things away, hopefully at Synergy of this year, if I can get one. If not, we're going to be maybe switching over to a really awesome Jeep Wrangler for this year's giveaway. But nonetheless, we're going to give away something super sexy. Use this URL, register. Attending this event is qualification enough, and you'll be in the drawing for that. And what you should expect from us, and somebody hold me accountable for this, we're giving away one of these things every year because we just like giving stuff away, especially fun stuff like this. For everyone in attendance, if you will email this email address after this, if you would like a in-computing RX420, which is the Igel version of an in-computing device, doesn't do everything Igel does because it's ported over to ARM, but it does a lot. If you would like something beyond this that does everything Igel does, we can get you a UD Pocket, we can get you an LG device or other platforms to run Igel on. But if you want one of these, I got a whole box of them in my office. They've been sitting here for months. I want to get these in your hands so you can start playing with Igel a little bit and experience the great solution. With that, I want to introduce Jed Ayers. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, Jed, and let you take over. Jed's going to open us up with the Igel keynote. Jed is a very passionate technologist and marketing person. I don't degrade the idea of being a marketing person because Jed and technical marketing go hand in hand. And to be honest, he's taught me a lot about what I wanted to do, but how to do it and going to market and being a great partner. And I'll use that word partner in this case as a vendor, but in XenTegra's case as a integration partner. That is truly what Jed and the team at Igel are doing. So Jed, I'm gonna pass it over to you now.
Well, thank you so much, Andy, for the kind words and introduction. And I apologize in advance to all of you for my voice. I caught a little bit of a cold from my nephew over Thanksgiving and trying to get over it. So didn't want to hand the reins over to deliver this to anyone else because I really love XenTegra and love the culture and the values of XenTegra and the partnership that they bring to the table with Igel. So you'll have to bear with me for a half an hour and listen to this scratchy voice. So thank you so much for the opportunity to do this and to do it virtually. I'm sorry that we're not in person, but hopefully somewhere around this world, as the world comes back into focus, we will be together again physically. We did 11 of these before the latest version of COVID has slowed everyone down again, and they were really successful. So this is sort of a recap. I will tell you, I'm going to give you kind of my overview and journey with Igel. The real important stuff is going to be when you talk to Doug and the community, and really hearing from Jeff Kohlberg on the OS 12 and the work we're doing to build the next generation of the Igel operating system. There's some amazingly exciting stuff that he's going to share. So I'm going to try to be pretty brief, but give you a good overview of the journey that we've been on and the focus that we have as a company.
Hey, Jed, as you're starting this, I just want to highlight for the group, if you have questions, I'll be moderating that. I'll probably chime in with some questions here and there, but Doug and team, Jed in this case, we really want to make this a conversation as if we were in person as best as we can, doing it virtually.
Absolutely. We're good listeners, and I can tell you the hour that leading up to this, we had lots of good lively conversations on how we can serve our customers better. And I think this is a value that we share in terms of how we run our companies. So I want to start by just saying thank you. I know that you have a lot of things on your plates as we wind out the year. Thank you for spending this time with us. I also want to, I know we have a number of customers on this call. Could you raise your hand if you're an Igel customer? And thank you for being a customer. We value that. We've been in business for 20 years. I'm going to share with you some of the milestones as a company. I know we have some customers on this call, like David Prowse, that have been with Igel for a very long time. So thank you. Can you raise your hand if you're a prospect of Igel? Because these are the most exciting people that we want to zero in on. If you haven't got the Igel religion yet, we want to help you and succeed and learn about the Igel. So if you're an Igel prospect or a newbie, please raise your hand, and we'll come find you. I also want to say thank you to our partners. When we did this on the road, I think we had 19 different partners that were with us in 11 cities. And one of the things I'm very proud about is the ecosystem and the community that that we've built around the Igel operating system. And one thing I will say that I'm very proud about is that if you look across the top of this, I think we're the only company in the world right now in end user compute that say we're hosting an event that has exclusive EUC content and can bring all 4 of these leading protocol providers into the same room and into the same conversation. And I think, this is part of the value that Igel is bringing, is sort of future proofing against these protocols. And then also all the surrounding, solutions, hardware, analytics, collaboration, et cetera. So we'll talk more about that later, but this is a special, slide for the people that did the Disrupt events with us last month. I also want to just put a little more color on XenTegra. You heard from Andy on what they do. XenTegra is one of the top partners for Igel worldwide. And not only do they have all the right, top certifications, and they're one of the first partners that we have that also has all the specializations for delivering services. They also just push us to be better. They're on all our advisory councils. Andy is always coming to us with ideas. We have a very intimate and focused relationship, which is all customer orientated. So they do things that no one else does around Igel, and they make investments in helping customers succeed with Igel like no other partner in the world. And I believe, partner of the year, 1 year, and probably in the running even this year. So thank you to Andy and the team that's on this call.
So Jed, I'll just comment on that real quick. 5 years in a row, we've been some form of partner of the year, whether it's on the marketing side, the services side, the straight up just general partner side. We were stacking up the Igel awards, and do the awards matter? They do, because it shows that Igel appreciates what we're doing for you and your community.
Exactly. And I think you definitely are maintaining the largest install base on the Eastern Seaboard for us and doing a great job of making sure customers are cared for after they buy Igel. So I wanted to share with you my 5-year journey. I've been in tech for over 25 years. I actually spent 20 of those years on the solution provider side. And so I have a lot of respect for the things that Andy brings to the table. But I joined, and I've been very focused on end user compute for about 20 of those years. I joined Igel 5 years ago, and I left AppSense after we sold the company to what was Landesk at the time, now Ivanti. And when I was looking around after we made that sale at opportunities, Igel came into my lens. They were looking for someone to run North America. And I had a lot of different mentors and people around me at the time that told me, do not take the job. And it was an interesting conversation. This was in 2016. If you go back to 2016, you probably remember Elliott was inside of both Citrix and VMware. VDI was sort of a challenging space back then. Not that it isn't challenging today. It was challenged, I would say, in 2016. It was also, Igel was a hardware company. A lot of companies were kind of moving out of hardware and away from hardware. And so that was a challenging piece of it. And it was also a German company, right? As an American in Silicon Valley, these were, this looked like a challenging thing to bring a German company and the German technology into the US. So a lot of very smart people told me, run the other direction because of these three things. I looked at it and I saw something different. And I guess I'm one of those people that when people tell you, don't do something, I actually like to prove them wrong. This is some of the ethos of how we run the company, right? That we have this sort of visionary, dream big, work hard, and you can kind of beat expectations, right? This is a part of a core value that we hold inside of Igel. And so, when I looked at it, what I saw was there was this Linux operating system. Of course, it was sort of shrouded inside that plastic hardware box, but I saw that it was very, it was the best in the industry, in not only the OS, but also the management tool. I saw that Linux was extraordinarily relevant and it was growing very quickly underneath VDI. I saw the security benefits of a Linux operating system, and I saw this partner ecosystem. And so I thought, wow, there's something to this. We can bring this into the US and really be successful. And so I wanted to give you a quick look back so you had a little more of a frame on how Igel, how long we've been at this. The founder, Heiko Gloge, who you see pictured here on the far left, he actually joined a German company that's a 200-year-old German family company called Melchers as an apprentice in 1988. This is a trading company, and they were primarily trading luxury goods into China. He convinced them to start an electronics reseller called Netcom. And he had a very successful, basically distribution business in Germany, distributing different technologies. He found Igel in the 90s and became their master distributor. Igel was a sort of fast-growing, publicly traded company that got caught up in the dot-com implosion. And the first version of Igel. And he basically bought the name Igel, and he founded the company 20 years ago this month, actually, I think 8 days from today. And he basically bought the name and he formed Igel in 2001 of December. And so these three guys that were with the original Igel are the ones that wrote the original operating system. They worked on the original framework for the management. Frank, Klaus, and Martin are still with the company. So these three guys are still driving the code base and driving the solutions. And some of the customers on this call have probably actually met these three guys. It's a sustained 20+ year development effort on Linux. Igel has been the #1 player in Linux and thin clients since 2006. We have about 40% of the market share there. This is the most important economy in the EU. So it's a pretty big position against the likes of Dell and HP. And then the other big thing I will share with you is in 2011, there was a big game-changing moment. Igel figured out how to take that OS and port it to other devices. They didn't do much with it until we got the message right, and we really positioned it in 2016 differently into the US. And so when I joined the company in 2016, it was a $75 million hardware company that was almost entirely European and German based, and there was only 7 employees in the US. A couple of those employees are actually on this call, either at different companies, or one of them is you're going to hear from in a few minutes, but Jeff Kohlberg is on the call. But I think Paul Finn is actually on this call also, who was with the company when I joined back in 2016. So when I joined, the first thing I did is talk to 50 customers about why they were buying Igel. And I think you're going to hear from David Prowse. He was one of those 50 customers we called, and we asked him, why are you buying Igel? What are you getting from it? And we tried to distill it down into 3 words. It simplified their environment. It saved them a lot of money, so it was very smart. And it reduced their security vulnerabilities. So these were the 3 things we heard. And we went hard at sort of driving the business outcomes around these 3 things. And as a software company and a software product, we had this vision at that point that, hey, we can help transform how the world works, create better outcomes for people, for organizations, and for our planet. And what I would say is this vision was built well before COVID, right? When COVID hit, it sort of accelerated and magnified that vision for us. And I would tell you this chart I love from Gartner because it sort of shows how, the technology of having to help people work from home went from worldwide, maybe 350 million people to over 1 billion. Basically in one 6-week period, we had over 1 billion people having to work from home. And so many of you on this call, I think, went through the sort of front lines battle to make this a reality, right? The reason why I like to show this chart is that I think this is the high watermark that every organization is sort of engineering for now to deliver a great work from anywhere experience, right? Gartner is predicting that it's going to we're going to move back to a hybrid model, and that it's going to level out around 600 million people working remotely permanently, but we're always going to have to sort of guard against the other half of that who could be asked to work from home at any moment. I love this quote because I think we also all live through this too, right? Which is just a massive acceleration of everything needing to be moved to the cloud and remote everything, right? And the Satya quota from their June earnings right after this big rush to get everybody working securely and highly productive in June. So what has this meant to Igel's business? I wanted to share this with you just from a numbers perspective. This is in euros and seats. I love this because this is the report card for me personally to all those naysayers that said don't join Igel back in 2016. Anybody who can grow a company in triple digits, both in revenue and in seat count, this is a special kind of Cinderella moment. And I want to talk a little bit about what drove that. Linux is the de facto standard now for people that are deploying VDI. Why? It's just kind of silly to put Windows back underneath a solution where you're trying to centralize and simplify the management and reduce the security issues. And so one of the guys who actually encouraged me to take this job was the guy who was running the thin client division for Intel back in 2016, Alec. He told me, I can see very clearly that thin OSs, thin operating systems are growing faster than PCs, and Linux is outpacing Windows. It crossed over in 2018, and it became the fastest and biggest growing OS of choice. And as you can see here, 54% of the endpoints are running Linux under VDI. We commissioned a study this year with an independent third party out of the Netherlands, Rawworks, and because we wanted to have an independent company look at why is Igel not only more secure and easier to manage, but how does it stack up against Windows in terms of performance? And so they ran on 3 different flavors of HP, Dell, and Lenovo hardware, over 70 different use cases, and they came back with their findings. And I think we're going to put in the chat window a link so you can look at this study, but it clearly shows that actually Igel fully outperformed Windows. And I think a lot of people really lean in when they see this, like, wow, okay, this is third party. These are very clearly set up in a lab. And it shows how much better Igel is for the user experience. So take a look at it. I think Ron was going to put up a link that will take you to the document so you can see it for yourself. So a big thing happened for Igel. When you grow in triple digits, you get the attention of a lot of people, right? And we disrupted this space as we kind of create this new category of an edge operating system for cloud workspaces. And so in March of this year, TA acquired the full majority share of the company. Heiko and Melcher still have a minority share of the company, but we now have a Silicon Valley growth-oriented investment. And they're very focused on helping us deliver an even better product into the enterprise customer base and growing into a more worldwide software company. One of the guys who joined our company through that acquisition is a guy named Bill Vecti. Bill, if you don't know this name, he's a legendary executive, 20 years at Microsoft. He was a peer to Satya. He went to HP, was part of HP when Meg was there, and they split the company in half. He did Windows 7. That's kind of his claim to fame. He also did a lot of the early work with the Citrix partnership. So he has a lot of expertise in building great operating systems. So he is now working with us on a daily basis as we build what we're pushing for, which is the best operating system in a generation. And so this is his aspiration. This is his quote. And it's what you're going to see from Jeff in a few minutes in OS 12. This operating system has his fingerprints on it. So he's been a great addition to the team here at Igel. So I wanted to give you a slide that had all the big Igel logos that drove the triple digit growth. But as you all know, you can't show logos without getting in trouble. There's a lot of compliance around that. But I will tell you, Igel is in the largest retailers in the world at scale. We're in the largest hospital systems in the US at scale, largest financial services in government and education. And I want to give you a quick summary from my chair of what's driving the growth. These 5 things are really what is driving consumption and interest from Igel. We talked about the work from anywhere. I want to double click on endpoint security and management. We've had a number of very high profile customers in the last couple of years through the COVID challenges who have been immediately compromised by ransomware and malware. And interestingly, typically in these environments, the only devices that are left running after they're compromised are the Igel devices. And so we've seen a number of very large companies get religion at the CISO level around deploying Igel across the board as an alternative to Windows. So security is a big part of what we do. Also the management, both contextual and policy and onboarding, all the things, magical things we can do with our management console. This is a big part of why people are choosing Igel, and the ability to manage these devices that are out in the wild. It's a big part of why people are running towards Igel. The chip shortage, a lot of people have been hurt by this, right? We've actually helped a lot of companies put devices back into circulation, and devices that could not run Windows 10 or Windows 11, or people that could not get hardware. We've been able to help them solve that problem by repurposing older devices. And that leads into the sustainability thing I'll talk about in a minute. But front and center to all of our jobs here is user experience. And that really is probably premier way Igel is helping customers today is making sure the user experience is good or better than a fat client. And that's kind of our North Star as we work with you to make sure that, as you put this in place, Igel is invisible and people can just use these technologies without any compromise, high fidelity. So I want to double click on sustainability. I mean, I think we all are hearing more about the environment and the challenges of the future of keeping this planet in a good place for future generations. One of the things that is in that vision statement that I shared with you is better outcomes for people, organizations, and the planet. This is an important thing that I think every organization needs to think about and needs to have some sort of focus and initiatives around. IT is a big polluter in this space. There's over 50 million tons of gear that goes into the landfill every year. And this is what Igel likes to sort of put the brakes on, right? We take pallets and pallets of devices and put them back to use. And Andy, I don't know if you want to comment here on some of the things that you do in this space, but you're one of the leading voices in our community that it has initiatives from the reseller space around this type of repurposing.
Yeah, I'll just comment that from our corporate perspective, reusing devices, and I've done this for years and years and years with Igel now. That is a great way to take what used to be a fat PC with a lot of capabilities and make it a very competent thin client using the Igel solution. In addition to that, for the folks attending, XenTegra has started a nonprofit where we take your e-waste, ideally laptops and desktops that have 4 gigs of memory or more, and we repurpose those into refurbished devices that we then en masse donate to other nonprofits. It's just a way for us to give back. So if you have devices that are end of life for your world, but with a lightweight Linux OS could be very usable, that's something we would love to talk to you about. Our nonprofit would love to talk to you. And in addition to that, if you just have e-waste, like you see on the screen, there's tons of this stuff. I mean, literally 50 to 60 tons, a million tons a year going into the landfill. Let us have that e-waste. We can take it to official recycling partners who will give us money for that. And that money we can use to help fund our nonprofit as well as to invest in other nonprofits. It is a massive opportunity to make a difference and use our skills and our connections to prevent what you see here on the screen while giving people a hand up. I'll make my simple comment here. A lot of people want to, don't give a man a fish, teach him to fish. And in today's world, somebody's got to provide the fishing rod. That's what we want to do.
One of the best things that Andy does for us is he does these conversion workshops. Bring your oldest, junkiest device, bring it, come together with Andy and his team. We convert it. We show you how you can connect it to Citrix, and it blows people's minds what you can do with an older device. We have a lot of information on our website about the sustainability. There's a link in the bottom of this slide, but we just did a study with a UK financial services customer where they took 3,100 plus staff and they put them on the Igel OS on old devices rather than buying new ones. And you can see the staggering numbers here in terms of reduction of CO2. So, think about it. We'd love to help you extend the life of your devices. You'd be surprised what we can do with older devices and making them run Windows 10 or 11.
And Jed, I don't know if you hit on this, but you guys can help them get carbon credits for this. My nonprofit can help them get carbon credits for this.
Exactly.
We got to find ways to help the environment and help improve our business standing.
Exactly. So I touched on this, but I just had the Igel leaders in San Francisco this week for the Igel Ready kind of review. And the Igel Ready program is something we launched a little over a year ago to sort of formalize all these relationships that are built into our OS and into our management console to give value to you out of the box and confidence that not only is it going to work when you take it out of the box, but a year from now, as all this stuff is moving, that Igel is going to be in sync so that Zoom is going to work or Teams is going to work. Or that, as Citrix is pushing things out, we're technically in step with them. since we launched this, there's over 100 partners joining this. I was just on a call this morning with the executives of Genesis. We're adding them into this program. So what does this mean for you? It means that you can expect these technologies to work and that we're going to stay in sync with them. And that we have a high degree, a high fidelity relationship, every logo that you see on here contractually. So it's a very important program for us. And if you see a name on this chart, there's real meat behind the relationship. I will also say to you, if you see something that's important in your workflow that's not on here, let Andy know, let me know, and we will work to get them added. Great software companies have ecosystems, and I hope this gives you some confidence that we're adding 2 to 3 people a week to this program. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide because you're going to hear from it, but this is one of my proudest moments and best hires that I made in the 5 years that I've been with Igel, was hiring Doug Brown and let him run with this community. It's taken on something I don't think either of us could have predicted over a breakfast we had in Germany 5 years ago. It's unlike anything else in the end user community, and we'll double click on this in a minute, but if you haven't joined it, join it. You'll get a lot of value out of it. I want to run a video because I'm so impressed that Andy taught me how I can run videos across Zoom yesterday. So I have a 1-minute video that you'll hear from 4 or 5 customers here on why they selected Igel. And a few of these are actually real-time people that used Igel through their COVID crisis. So I'll let this work. Hopefully it'll roll.
The main benefit the city found by moving over to Igel OS is that all of our users get the same experience every time they log in. They no longer have nagging slowness or issues when we had Windows on their underlying machines.
The whole idea behind delivering an Igel OS powered PC was simplicity. The staff don't have to think about loading Citrix onto the device, they don't have to worry about what version of HDX optimization they've installed. They simply turn on and they're presented with the familiar login screen.
So the introduction of virtual desktops and the use of Igel has allowed us to have full mobility around the office as well as at home, giving a better work-life balance for our users. It's a lot easier for our users to work on site, off-site, anywhere they need to be, even around different countries.
If somebody were to break into this and steal this laptop, because thanks to Igel, thanks to Citrix, thanks to the virtualization concepts, they'd just be stealing the hardware. They would get no data from eBay. There was nothing that you could rip off this device that would put anything that we do at risk. It's pretty rare in this environment to have something where I can just pick back up where I left off, and I haven't lost any of my productivity, haven't lost any of my data, haven't lost any of my settings. Having that virtualization concepts that Igel and Citrix bring to the table, just make this an amazing process.
Another reason why we selected Igel is for our telephony. We use Cisco Jabber, and Igel worked out the box instantly with it, where other suppliers just didn't work at all.
Igel provided a production solution in days, not months.
Igel has been great to work with as a partner. They've been very supportive and responsive whenever we have any questions about their product, and we can't imagine a better partner with us through this journey.
Awesome. I just realized I'm way over time, so I'm going to cut this short. When you hear from Jeff in a few minutes, he's going to share with you our vision of where the world's going. We believe that that we're going to see a movement to more cloud delivered applications and hybrid models, right, where you have multiple protocols, you have multiple versions of ways that applications will be delivered to a desktop. We believe that it's a thin OS is going to be the OS that will win, and one that's hyper tuned to work well with these solutions. And so you're going to see this vision from Jeff of how OS 12 is going to do that for us. I will just tell you, as the leader of the company, what we're focused on as we make this transition out of OS 11 and into 12 is we're going to make it easier for unboxing and onboarding people into this tech, so that if they're sitting at home, they can get on Igel easier. We're going to make it easier to update this technology without the monolithic operating system. It's going to be just the things that you need to be updated with auto updates. We're going to give you better telemetry, and we're going to give you, insights into things that you can't imagine today that will be in a dashboard for you, that I think will help you deliver a better environment for your end users. We are also working very, very diligently with some of the biggest names in the hardware space, Lenovo, LG, and most recently HP, to deliver Igel from the factory on their hardware. I can't tell you what an affirming thing that is for me, as someone that lined up 5 years ago and was fighting against these guys. They're now at our doorstep, integrating our hardware and leading with Igel on their devices. So, our goal is to give you choice across hardware platforms, choice across protocol and delivery. But more than anything, we want to be a great partner to you. I want to make sure that you all know that we have this virtual EBC program that we do with XenTegra. This is where we can learn more about what you're trying to do, and we can do the discovery both ways, get a little closer to what you're trying to accomplish. You can talk directly to our CTO, Matthias Haas, and it's a great, 2 to 3 hours spent virtually or in person. So we'd love to do that with you. I'll leave you with Linux celebrated their 30th birthday this year. This was the email that Linux, it wasn't an email, it was a post that he put on a listserv about this OS that he was going to create. You probably all know on this call that Linux has basically won the battle as the leading operating system in just about every realm of tech. And it's been the greatest open project in terms of collaboration, perhaps in humanity, right? With the amount of collaboration that's happened around it. The only place where Linux has not won is in the desktop. And what's interesting for Igel is that we all know who owns the desktop, Microsoft, right? Igel, I had the pleasure of standing on the stage back in November 5th, 2019, when Microsoft launched what was at the time called Windows Virtual Desktop, now Azure Virtual Desktop, with Scott Manchester. And so this was a moment where I think we saw a change in how Microsoft looks at the underpinnings of these solutions. They chose Igel to stand on the stage in front of 30,000 people at Ignite to showcase how Linux can deliver a great experience for these solutions. This was a remarkable moment, and I think we're headed into the 20-year anniversary of Igel, our birthday on the 10th. Everybody at Igel will have the day off. They'll be doing Christmas shopping at the end of the week. So this is a momentous thing for Igel as a tech company. Many tech companies that don't last 5 years, let alone 20 years. So a pretty special moment for the company. I'll close with, our values. Igel wants to partner with you through XenTegra. We have a strong commitment around kind of the personal values of trust and integrity, innovation. And, the number one thing for Igel is we are partner to the core. And partnership is about good listening. So if you have feedback on things we could be doing better, I'm going to give you my phone number in a minute. There's over 400 employees. They all thank you for spending a little time with us today. And we like to believe that we when you interact with us, you'll feel this servant heart kind of ethos. And if you haven't felt that, here's my phone number. At any time, if you want to reach out to me, I've reached out to most of you over LinkedIn. We have a very flat and fast and humble organization. And if you have any thoughts about things we could be doing better or need help from me, reach out anytime. And so with that, I'm going to hand it back to you, Andy. And if there's any questions, happy to answer them now or at the end.
Yeah, and I would encourage people, there are lots of chat window things going on, which is great. Also, if you have specific questions, throw them in the question Q&A section of the application. And Jed, there's a lot there. We could probably talk over coffee or lunch or just in a meeting with folks on the call for hours about some of the things you covered there, whether it's security or repurposing devices or a mission from Igel to build a community and then help serve that community. lots going on there, and I appreciate your partnership with not only us, but the customers and others that are on here and beyond. With that, let's talk about an investment you guys are making, and that is bringing Mr. Doug Brown on over to the Igel team, and Doug and his team building out a phenomenal community. We've got Doug Brown with us, David Fainer's with us, David Prowse is with us. That's the community that we have represented here, but it is a massive community with a lot of real-time Q&A going on, and a group of people that are truly, for the right reasons, all in the boat together, rowing in the same direction. And I love getting around that group because they really do value each other. And with that, Doug, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, Andy. And there's a few things I want to say before I get started talking about the community. One, XenTegra. I absolutely love these guys. I've had joining Igel has been a pure gift for me. Like Jed said, I joined shortly after he did, and been here almost 5 years in January. It's my favorite job I've ever had, and to get that pleasure in such a late stage in my life, as you can see, I have gray now, is a true gift from the heavens. And it's really a testament to the great product and great technology we have. When I joined Igel, I thought I knew what we did. And almost every single day, and still to this day, I watch someone like Jeff Colbert, do a demo of this, and I'll learn something. It's truly an amazing piece of technology. And the folks over at XenTegra, they're the best of the best. I always call these guys sort of the integrator 2.0. They took the model of an integrator, flipped it on its head, and not only gave great service, but also gave back, and like some of the things Andy talked about. So let's see, what else? I think that's Paul Finn, hello. So that's it. He keeps texting me, and I had actually wrote his name down prior to him texting, so I didn't forget him. So let's get going. I also have the Davids with me, which I'm really happy about, and they're going to give some of their experiences within the Igel community. So again, my name is Doug Brown. My job at Igel is I run the technical publications in the community. So not just the community, but now they gave me the knowledge base. So we're going to do some amazing stuff with the knowledge base. We're already taking this thing to the next level. So an engineer or a former engineer running a knowledge base is a great thing, because the attention to detail we're trying to bring to this thing is amazing. So let me talk a bit about the Igel community. And the Davids will pipe in and share their sort of experience. But about 5 years ago, Jed and I were chatting, and next thing I know, he said, "Hey, come on up to Bremen and meet Heiko and I." And I met these guys, and they said, "What do you want to do at Igel?" And I said, "I want to build a community." And they said, "Well, what that's all about?" And Jed got it; he understood totally. But Heiko, he was a little, "What's this mean? What is a community?" And I explain it in many different ways, but the way I really love to explain it to people today is the customer journey from the time a customer first hears your name, first goes, visits your website, downloads your software, starts playing with it until the end of time. That's the customer journey. What the Igel community is all about is being there with them throughout that process. And so that when they do buy the product, for example, we just don't come back in 3 years or a year or 2 years or 5 years or whatever and say, "Hey, remember us, pay us some more money." No, we're there the entire time. If they have a question, we're there to answer it. If they want to meet like-minded folks, they're there also, like the Davids, for example. If they want to just see what somebody else is doing and get ideas that they never thought about. That's what the community is all about. And it really, the customer journey accelerates, and we're there right along. Davids, you had something to add?
I was just saying, for sure. Yeah. I learn stuff all the time from the community that I didn't even think about doing with Igel.
David has an interesting story, because David Prowse was actually a member of the Igel community before you even bought the product, correct?
Yeah. Back in, I joined the community in 2018, but back in 2017 at VMworld, I got a little, a UD Pocket that I started playing around with Igel with, and over the couple months I started playing with it, and then I had questions, so I started searching for a community to ask questions in, and that's how I found the community.
Perfect. And today, David is a community member of the year, and also our first and only at the moment Igel Community Fellow. So here's a guy that just found us at a trade show because we had big banners of pretty people or something, right? And next thing he's one of our most important thought leaders. So really amazing. David,
I
Fainer,
would-
did you add something?
Yeah, I would add on to that. It's just not we talk about all topics, technology related, not just Igel sometimes. Like I'm working on building Home Assistant, but there's somebody in the community that's done it before. So we ask questions on there too. And we ask about life and things like that. How is everybody doing?
You got it. It's a lot of fun. It's not just, as one of our members described, it's like going to a pub, meeting a bunch of techs and talking tech. That was the entire goal. For techie by techie, right, Jed? So I get the question
That was
a
the
lot.
original premise we went in with.
That's exactly right.
Don't let the ivory tower mess it up.
That's exactly right. That's the nice way of phrasing it. So I was at E2EVC, and if you're not familiar with E2EVC, definitely check it out a few weeks ago in Lisbon. And I was surprised at how many people came up to me and said, Doug, we can't believe how amazing the Igel community is. How did you build this thing? And I sort of, looking back on something, it makes a lot of sense. Moving forward, it's sort of a crapshoot. But so I came up with really 4 rules, and I want to share these things with you. At the same time, explain what the Igel community is along the line. So first of all, we needed the right platform. That's the first ingredient to having a successful community. We chose Slack. Slack was a great platform for us because we brought the community to the customer, to the engineer, not requiring them to join yet another website. Most of our members already use Slack. So it was a great platform. The other thing was it allowed us real-time communications. It's not just a forum where you post something and maybe someone answers a faceless name or what have you, but it was in real time. And you'll see this within the community. When we show you the numbers, you'll see, boy, it's not all Q&A. It's a lot of chit chat between all of us. As David mentioned, Fainer mentioned also, we're talking about things off subject. And that's what Slack provided us. The second ingredient was passionate internal champions. Igel is an amazing company. As Jed mentioned, we have amazing employees, and these employees love talking about Igel. It's not just something they sell or not something they support, it's something they love. And so in return, we had these employees join and start sharing their passion with our members. And of course, passion's infectious, right? And the third ingredient was loving and loyal customers. And if you get a chance to join the Igel community, which of course we recommend, or you're already a member, or you just listen to the Davids or any of our other customers, you know that they love us because we make great software. We're great people. Where Jed gives out his personal phone number. Insanity, right? And he will respond to you very quickly. It's a little bit weird, but he's on it, right? And so we have you start taking all those ingredients and you put them in one, and what you end up with is a full community. And of course, the last ingredient, of course, is a wee bit of luck, but you make your own luck in life, right? In those 3 ingredients, the great products, the openness and the ability for us to do this stuff. For me to come into Igel and say, hey, guys, I want to build a community, and then to fully support me with it, fund it, give me the time to do it, is really phenomenal. And they did that because of you, the customer, you, the partner, right? It's really, really a great thing.
Hey, Doug,
So
I'm going to add on to that. I wouldn't just say customers. It's more like a family. Like we talk, like I said before, we talk all the time. How's everybody's kids? How are the holidays? But we also talk about the tech things. So I would say the community feels more like a family.
Yeah, you got it. I thought it was interesting. David, you went to the Chicago Disrupted in person. A bunch of you guys actually got together and went out for dinner, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. A few of us went out and, never had met face to face before. It was good to get to see people actually in person, but from around, different parts of the country. So.
It's amazing. It's amazing to get back out and see these to the shows. I was in Utrecht in the Netherlands. I'm in Berlin, and to meet all these people. That I met a guy that I thought I'd met many times because we'd talked so many times within the community. It's just really neat. So that said, a little bit by the numbers. This is sort of fascinating too. In just 1,400 days, so about it'll be 4 years, I think, on the 20th of December. We have 7,409 members. But the staggering number here is that, in fact, I always mess up even saying this, the number's so big, right? 272,000 plus messages posted, and you can see the red lines. You know, they're not slowing down. This was the COVID bump, but it's still going. Where you see in a lot of communities, there was a little bit of a drag. You know, there was a bump, truly, but our bump is still going. And that's really a testament, again, to what we have in the community we have, and the product we have, and the people we have, right? The complete tree, the complete picture. We have 4,726 unique companies from 94 countries. And if anyone's out there from Greenland, please join. Please join. I want to prove Jed and Simon that I can do it. So if you're not from Greenland, don't join and say you're from Greenland, Paul Finn. So what does our members say? So we have a couple of them on, and I'll have these guys talk in a second, but I absolutely love this quote because this is really what I wanted to accomplish in so many ways. I won't read the entire thing. I'll just read the highlights here, but every single issue he had was solved. It was either solved by someone saying, do this, or him just looking around, right? As techies, we like to browse around. And what I really love here is he can learn, he was able to learn how to accomplish things he didn't even know he needed to know. In life, there's three things. There's things you know, there's things you know you don't know, and then there's things you don't know, or you don't know you don't know. These are the ones that scare me, right? Because how do you figure it out if you don't know you don't know? The Igil community helps you with that. So when I read this, I was on high heaven, and I think I sent it to Jed like 5 times in a row. And then it finally sent me a text saying, stop it now. So I'll go with David first. David, what does the Igil community mean to you? Can you maybe share something, you know, and your company, right? You know, how were we able to impact how you do a daily business?
Me, David, or David Prowse?
Let's do you first. You piped up first. It doesn't matter. It's a fight here.
So the Igil community is a big part. I'm on it all the time. Like Zach said in his write-up, like when we were doing integrations or whenever we were first starting to use the Igil community. I mean, Igil as a software. Anytime I had any issues or anytime I needed to figure anything out, I would go search the community and find an answer, or if I couldn't find an answer, I'd ask a question. And then within the first 5 minutes, no matter what time it was, since I'm in the Eastern time zone, Seb would immediately answer. It's like Seb's a robot. And he would like point us to a KB article or point us to whatever we needed. And then same thing with the rest of the people in the community. If they beat Seb, it turns into a competition, a fun competition sometimes to see if we could beat him. But everybody's able to help everybody out. I would say some of my best friendships that I have in the tech space are with the people in the community.
That's great. That's great.
I would definitely agree with that. Yeah, you know, the community, you know, as we mentioned earlier, that's kind of where I got my start with Igil. I mean, you know, I wasn't a customer, so I really didn't have access to support. And even then, I haven't really needed support since we've had it, because you know, the community usually is there to either somebody else has had the issue and I've been able to find it, or we're able to ask questions and get the answer pretty quick. You know, all hours of the day. I mean, it's, you know, it's a worldwide community. You know, we have somebody, it's 5 a.m. for them right now, so they're not joining us, you know, in New Zealand, that, you know, he answers questions for me, I answer questions for him. You know, we've have Carl Barrett, you know, and it's not just New Zealand, but even, you know, Europe and US, Canada. You know, I've got friends all over that I never could have imagined, you know, meeting. So, and we rely on each other for not just Igil, but Citrix and, you know, sometimes VMware and some of the other ones as well.
Hey, Prowse, you also have to mention me and you do play tricks on each other, like sending each other gummy bears.
Yes, we do send each other gummy bears once in a while.
Okay, so let's continue. So, but wait, there's more. There's always more. It's not just a Slack group. We do take a lot of what we learn from the Slack group, because what we see is the same questions being asked over and over, or someone coming to a direct message, or, you know, just a conversation. Hey, it would be great if we could talk about this. So we started creating monthly meetups. And these meetups are, again, for techie by techie. We dive deep into technologies, but sometimes sometimes we also, for example, the one in front of you is how to set up and debug a Linux live system. We also bring on experts too. Jed's come on and talk with us, our CTO. In fact, next week we have our year-end recap, where our CTO and our product management team will come on and talk about 2021, and then also a little bit about 2022, sort of a sneak peek of what we'll start showing you and talking about in January, right? But we also bring on guys like Chris Fleck from Citrix, who's sort of the father of the Raspberry Pi and a bunch of other great technologies, right? And we bring him on. We just have, an hour, 2-hour conversation, and it's a lot of fun. So please join our meetups. You can head over to igelcommunity.com and go to events, and you'll see it. You can also watch our old ones on the video site if my thing will work. We also do tech tips too. So we get a lot of, like I said, a lot of questions are asked over and over and over. We figure, we can create a video. And this is actually one of the things Jed asked for me very early on, but unfortunately I don't have those deep technical skills the way I'd like to think I once did. So once we had Sebastian join, it was the first thing we sort of assigned to him. And this guy's just a genius, as David Fainer said. So he's doing these Tech Tip Tuesday videos where we take a specific tasks that we get to see a lot of questions on, and we create a short little video on it. So it's an easy way to stay up with what's important. But there is so much more. We have a customer ideas board where we literally take your feedback. Sebastian is tasked once a month to talk with our product managers and share this information, try to get it on roadmaps, what have you. We have an amazing GitHub repository within the Igil OS. We have the ability to create what's called a custom partition, which is basically an application you create, install locally on this lockdown thin client, right? This lockdown operating system, Edge OS. And Ron Nair, who's on the line, has done a phenomenal job taking this way beyond anything I ever dreamed of. So definitely check out that. The Igil Ready program, Jed talked about this a little bit. The Igil software is amazing, but what's really powerful is all these third-party companies, the ones you use, right? The ones you've invested in your ecosystem, come to us and say, we want to be part of what you guys are doing. And it's embedded into our technology. It's tested, it's approved, it's, what have you. And these guys are also joining the Igil community. So you can have a direct conversation with them if you don't already, right? We have a great VIP program. The Davids are part of this, where we try to give back to the community leaders, but also learn from them too, because these guys know a lot about our technology. We live in a bubble, they're able to share with us. And then hopefully someday, again, we're going to have in-person events. We had a great in-person event in Amsterdam in December 2019, and then, well, we know what all happened. So someday we'll get back to those. So bottom line with the Igil community is you're not alone. When you buy products from us, when you work with us, we don't take your money and say, ignore you, right? We're there for the long haul with you guys. And we have a great support staff. We've invested heavily in the support team within Igil. We have an amazing advanced services team for you. If you need that type of extra personal touch, some of the best in the industry, and of course, true expert at Igil, but also come join the Igil community, right? And meet all these great people and start learning things you didn't even know you needed to know. And that right there is the price of admission. So igilcommunity.com. What else do I say? I think that's it. David's anything else to add?
I'll agree with what Doug said is you need to join. Come join the family.
Yeah, and the thing I was going to mention is I've had people tell me that Igil is kind of complicated, but when you have something that has over 7,000 different settings, it can seem complicated. It's not that difficult to get up and running if you go through the community guides and stuff that are available. And there are some complicated things you can do with it with the help of the community or advanced services for that matter. But just don't look at it and think that it's overwhelming. There's a lot of help available to make it easy.
Definitely, and reach out to XenTegra too. Andy and company was more than happy to help you.
So for the Davids,
Andy,
the first time you guys saw Igil, it seemed like there's a lot of settings in there, but once you understand the logic of how it's laid out, it's really becomes something that as you know where to start looking, it unfolds right there in front of you. Would you agree?
100%.
Yeah, I would have to say we wouldn't be in by we, the company which I work for, wouldn't be where we're at now from a technology standpoint if it wasn't for Igil.
Great.
Hey, so let's
That's
do this.
great.
We got a good group
Now
in here.
stay
Doug.
tuned for now stay tuned for Jeff that shows us Igil OS 12, which is going to take this whole thing to a whole new level, and it's so amazing.
Yeah.
I'll shut up.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine.
Oh, it's amazing, Jeff. I can't wait. I mean, it's just really, truly, it's a dream.
So while I've got this much knowledge on the call, Doug Brown, you've been in the EUC space for a long time, let's say 20 years or more. Biggest change you've seen?
Oh, that's a good question. There's not a lot of change. There's a lot of progression in the EUC space. What's interesting is if you look back at 2002, and there was a great Citrix video talking about the future of the workplace, that's where we're at today, right? It just took us a while to get there, So as far as changes, yes, there's, we can do, I mean, the stuff with the 3D graphics and that stuff amazes me, right? Mm-hmm. But really it's a progression. It's this idea that, and COVID proved it, it's an idea that what we do is a better way to compute. From centralizing our data, centralizing our administration tasks, securing our back end, to something like Igil, which just makes sense that we have a secure endpoint. We don't have this big thing that's now complicating things. So to me, it's just a progression. It's one idea that we've managed to almost perfect over the years.
Yeah, cool. So another quick question. Do you remember the very first time that you saw a virtually delivered app through presentation protocol? Do you as one of these guys, one of us, right? Do you remember the very first time you saw Citrix and how it delivered an application?
Is this question for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally do. I totally do. I was leaving the office. I was an engineer at the time. I was leaving in the office, and the lady that gave us our work orders as engineer said, "Hey, Doug, are you heading home?" I said, "Yeah, she could drop off the system board." So I went to the place. I'm a talker, if you ever know me, and so I'm talking with the guy that I'm just dropping off a system board, and we're talking about mainframes, and he said, "Oh, you'll love this," and he hands me a copy Citrix WinFrame. So he's like, "Take it home," and I was like, "Oh, it's a big box." And I was like, "I don't want this, I can't take this. Don't give it to me, So like, "No, you'll love it. Take it home and drop it off when you pick up the system board when the replace." I took it home, and I was studying for my NT enterprise exam. I had the test the next day, so I just installed this thing on my thinking that it would be some software that went on top of NT, but of course it was the entire operating system. So I was, it's like, what's this? One, it completely erased my BDC. And the other thing is I was the most amazed that you could do this, right? It was like, wait a second, we can remote into it was, in those days, you still had PC Anywhere, right? Yeah. You were still in 28.8 modems. And I went back to the office the next day and I told my boss, I said, "You need to look at Citrix. Can we sell this?" And he said, "If you could sell it, it's let's do it." And, a couple of years later, Citrix called and said, "How would you like to work for us?" And at those point, my dreams came true. So it's the greatest thing my eyes have ever seen.
I'll move on to the other Davids, but I'll just ask one other rounding out question. Do you still get excited when you see that same thing solve problems for people? Do you still get excited when you see somebody else see it for the first time?
I would say absolutely. I have a funny story, and it'll be quick. I was at Best Buy on Black Friday, and one of the people that work in Geek Squad, like I was formerly Geek Squad, he said to me, "Have you heard of this German company that's going out and re-imaging everybody's endpoints?" And I was like, "Absolutely." So now the wording is now, and the vision is now getting out to people that are in the consumer space, that Igil is out there being a disruptive technology.
Yeah, you guys are probably like me. You get somewhere in a public place where there's a computer sitting there, like at a Verizon store or the Apple store in Grand Central Station or something, and you put Windows on it and you kind of giggle and show it to people, and you still find it funny and amusing that people don't know that that's a mainstream everyday thing, and there are tons of people that don't know, and that's what Igil brings to a secure edge. Let me ask David Prowse, number one reason why you use Igil at your financial institution, Beacon Credit Union. What's the number one reason? What does Igil do? Number one reason it's that you guys leverage the technology.
The number one reason is security, because we don't have to worry about the endpoints as much. Because there's nothing on them. You don't have to. We have policies that you're not supposed to save stuff on laptops and whatever, but you know it happens. You know, and it just secures it because it keeps it off the endpoint, and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine running Windows, as great as it is, it's still a very capable but yet exploitable, thick operating system. It's that's got to be one of the number one reasons why anybody who's not oblivious to the security needs would consider Igel for their edge operating system.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. Well, we got Mr. Jeff Kalberg. He's one of the original, I guess, Igel employees here in the United States, and he is the reason why I am an Igel fan in the very beginning. He just would not let me look past all the greatness of Igel. And to be quite frank, and I'll tell this story a million times, I had just gotten off a project with another thin client hardware/software vendor, but we'll call them hardware. And I had been flashing devices trying to get the proper Citrix client at that point in time called the ICA client or PN agent on a device. And Jeff's like, well, if you just use ours, you can toggle between the different versions of the Citrix PN agent and you don't have to image those devices. Like, okay, I'm sold. How do I move forward? Just great that they saw the vision for helping to simplify our needs as sysadmins and consultants and engineers. Jeff, welcome.
Thank you, Andy. Now, listening to all these reminiscing, you don't ask me about significant changes because I'm going to go back over 43 years. Probably was the introduction of the IBM PC, you know, which made this concept of a personal computer viable in business. And it set us on this path. The other thing is Jed talked about the conversion workshop. You remember we did the very first one, and I think we were in Charlotte. And you walked in the door with some kind of mini tower, okay, that had 286 written on it, then it had 386 on it, then it was 486 on it, then Pentium on it. And you kept scratching all these things off as you changed the system boards.
It was actually a Windows 90. It was a system came with Windows 98. It was old.
You said, let's see if we can put Igil OS on this. I have to confess. We never got that one to work. I don't recall. There was the other guy that had the compact that was kind of introducing this slide mouse kind of thing where you had an up and down slider and a back and forth slider. It was a laptop, and it was crazy stuff. Crazy
to give our audience the answer, it was I think this one did end up working. I forget how I had to burn a CD to get it to work. It was a Dell Optiplex 270, I think. One of those beige ones.
It was bad. Yes, it was bad.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, thanks for joining us. Jeff's going to go over the latest in the Igel solution, as well as talk to us a little about the roadmap. For those of you that are here for the technical content, Jeff is our man.
Yeah, let's make sure this thing runs. Come on, get started.
We can see, yeah, there you go.
All right, is it up?
It is.
All right, so when we did this presentation, one of the things that I first did this thing is I put a number up there. And this is not totally true today, but we had said at the time that I think it was 589, but now we'll say 649 days since I had stood in front of a group of people and presented Igel, and all due to the lockdown. But the reason I put this number up here is because we, at the time, one of the things I decided when we went into lockdown that I was going to start to run everything virtually, okay? And I was no longer going to use a laptop or a desktop or any other kind of local PC, but I was going to connect up, in this case, to Azure Virtual Desktop or Windows Virtual Desktop at the time, and I was going to live there. And since that day and to this day, even right now, I do everything in the cloud. So we talk about eating our own dog food. I do that every day. I have a laptop, a couple of laptops actually that I'll walk around with that have Igil OS on them, and I connect to the same desktop that I use every single day. So actually I have multiple desktops out there, but we're on my primary. One of the things we needed to do is be able to have unified communications and join conferences and do things like we're doing right now. And I was really proud of the fact that Igel, because we needed to do this, we've been at the forefront, and we actually now support unified communications, you know, with Citrix, Microsoft, and VMware sessions. Okay, and we do this with Cisco, and we do that with Cisco WebEx, we do it with Microsoft Teams, and we do it with Zoom. Okay, in order to offload that media experience, that multimedia experience of audio and video, okay, so that people have a good experience. So that was one of the things that we did, and that's now part of Igil OS today. So We talk about where we're going with Igil. You know, it's always been our mission. We want to be the #1 edge operating system for connecting to cloud workspaces or digital workspaces. That is still true today. And Jed mentioned about some of the growth that we've seen. The mission is coming true. We are moving in this direction. But to do that, we've had to do a lot of interesting things. One of the things that's happening and making this possible is a new kind of partner. Okay, one of the things that's happened here and is happening real time is that Igil operating system is now shipping on products that would have been in the past been competitors to Igil. But as Igil's moved away from a thin client company into an operating system company that supports the cloud environment, all of these companies are now installing Igil OS in their factories, okay, and making available products and solutions for customers that are out there. So we think that's pretty significant. That is one of the reasons that we're moving forward to becoming this #1 operating system. We talked a little bit about span and lifespan. When I started my career, there wasn't a PC. I mean, there were Apple IIs, people had them in their homes, and that was interesting. But outside of that, we were mainframe and mid-range systems. And you know, that IBM PC came out. So we talked about errors in computing. That first one was the old mainframe. Everything was in the data center. Everything was clear. Every cloud was secure. And there was a little bit of the only people working with the machines at the time. They were very special people. You know, nobody else would understand what we do. But it was a world that was actually quite secure. I grew up I came out of accounting, and I used to do auditing, and I do IT auditing at the time, and we'd run data through systems and analyze it and all this sort of stuff. And we would check the data centers were locked and nobody had access. It was very secure. As we went into the PC and we started moving in through the next really 30, 40 years of distributed computing, starting with the PC and then network getting introduced in 1983, 84. And that all of a sudden took that PC that was only plugged into the power, now plugged into another PC. And all of a sudden that opened up an opportunity for people to exploit. And of course, this has now become a concern. So we've moved all the way through this world of distributed computing and the growth of Citrix and ultimately starting to connect to these cloud services. And now we've moved into this new world of everything being in the cloud. So it's been quite a journey. What I think is very funny is we've almost come full circle. The data center that was secure is now a data center in the cloud being managed by some of the biggest and best and then probably most secure focused organizations in the industry. So we look at Amazon, and we look at Citrix, or we look at Microsoft, look at how VMware and Citrix work in those environments and what they brought us. And we realize that these are the first of the best data centers that we could possibly imagine from a security standpoint. And there's a little bit of security, there's a good feeling that comes with that. Igil's been part of this experience the entire way. And I thought it would be interesting for people to understand, you know, it was way back in 2001, okay, when I first got introduced to Igil, that we had just introduced Igil Linux 3. And we watched Igil Linux grow and expand since then. You know, Jed joined us right in 2016, right before we introduced OS 10. That's where I used to say marketing got a hold of the branding. Igil Linux 6 internally is what you guys know as OS 10 externally. Igil Linux 7 internally is what you guys know as OS 11. Well, very shortly here, we're going to be introducing OS 12. So give people a little bit of timeline there. So as we mentioned before, everything is going to be cloud delivered. And we on the Igil side, come on, advance. Okay, what we've done up until now, okay, is we have brought an edge operating system that allows you to connect to those cloud workspaces from Citrix and Microsoft VMware. The world has started to change. We're seeing those desktops that we've been running in the past are now moving into still accessing desktops, but also applications being delivered as cloud-oriented or cloud-based applications. I always laughed about Office 365. What a brilliant move by Microsoft. I mean, we all initially thought, oh, it's just the next version of Office. But what a lot of people didn't understand is that Office 365 is a cloud-based application. Yeah, it moved to subscription, but all of a sudden through Azure, through the internet, through the cloud, we're able to share and collaborate on documents. Okay, we're working on a project internally where we compare different versions of the Igil OS running Teams and other unified communications on different platforms. As we look at that, realize that we've got 4 people working in the same spreadsheet, all in different countries in different parts of the world. It's a fascinating stuff that the cloud has brought us. We're all connecting using Igil OS. So now OS 12, what do we got planned here? Well, we're trying to get everybody, giving everyone the edge operating system for the future. Okay, it's promising, we promise, and we contend we're going to make your life easier, the life of your customers, your people, and for the betterment of your organization. Okay, in order to do all that, okay, what we're seeing in the world, obviously the cloud, the benefit of the cloud. We're able to work together. We've got those world-class data centers. Okay, one of the benefits of the cloud is it's constantly updating. Okay, applications are constantly updating. Security is constantly being updated. This is an element that's a challenge today. It's what we see as a result of being in the cloud. One of the other things that we do is we've introduced challenges around security. So when we look at OS 12, we wanted to make sure that we can help people work securely from anywhere they wanted to work. We wanted to be able to help people address this threat of the ransomware, okay? And obviously keep an eye on data integrity. The other piece that we wanted to do, and we saw, is we looked at users and what are users doing today? Well, we've sent everybody home. We're going to bring some people back to the office, but a lot of us will come back to the office on a part-time basis. We have organizations out there say you can work from home or wherever you want, but you need to come into the office 2 days a week or 3 days a week. We've been shuttering real estate, office real estate, okay, and creating hoteling workspaces where people will come in and work at a desk for a few days. They'll plug in, they'll work, they'll go home. That's the way the users are working today. Okay, they're expecting IT to deliver something that just works. So we have to do an operating system that does the same thing, okay? What people are able to do depends on the internet, okay? Earlier this week, my internet went down. Boy, that was crazy. So, this is something we have to deal with. And how do we allow people to work that way? As we think about OS 12, these are all issues and challenges we wanted to address. So that being said, OS 12, this clicker doesn't work very well. I apologize. Okay. Okay, what we're driving for is giving a user a new and improved experience. Okay, among other things, okay, we're going to be introducing single sign-on to cloud identity providers. Okay, it's one of the things we need to do. We've had single sign-on inside of the confines of your internal network, but now that we've moved to cloud, how does all that happen, and how do we deliver an operating system that does that? We want to have applications, okay, where Igil today is grown up to 3 gig, and for us that seems huge. It's not, I suppose, when we compare it to, say, Windows, but it is large for us. We looked at this and said, how can we have an operating system that is a quarter of the size it is today and allow people to only add the functions that they want? Of course, the idea of an app store is a great way to accomplish that and have that be something that's managed using the Igil management tool. We wanted to provide a way for systems to automatically update behind the scenes, okay, so that we don't have this major undertaking of having to do a monolithic update of the operating system. Granted, it's very efficient and very responsive and secure, but it's not something that's always been easy. So doing an entire update of the Igil OS is a challenge. We looked at OS 12, we wanted to improve on that, okay? We wanted to allow people to connect to more workspaces, okay? So yes, we've had Citrix, we've had VMware, we've got Microsoft, okay? We also want to allow people to hook up to Amazon or to Nutanix using Frame and all the other technologies that are out there. So we're doing more to work with those, okay, and allowing people to manage that. And then of course we continue to have a focus on the endpoint, okay, by providing security that starts with the hardware, okay, and manages that security and makes sure that the connection to the edge or to the cloud workspace is going to be fully secured, fully signed along the way. And this is what we thought about as we went to create OS 12 or start designing OS 12. So coming in 2022, you will see OS 12 and you'll see a new management system, UMS 12, because we're going to get consistent here in our numbering scheme. So we'll go from UMS 6 to UMS 12. And then we'll start to introduce some new cloud services. So what do each of these look like? OS 12, okay, is going to be full and multi-cloud support, all right? So right now, we have the ability to connect, obviously, VMware and Citrix and Microsoft. And we also know that applications, okay, say that are running on Azure might depend on something coming from AWS, and all of these need to be supported in a uniform way from a single edge device, and we'll be supporting that on Igil. Single sign-on. We wanted to get to the point where an Igil device would be essentially unusable, okay, until you've been authenticated by your identity provider of choice. Obviously, out of the gate, we won't support all identity providers, but the goal is to have an Igil device that when you open it up, you have to log in, and that login, okay, that authentication will occur through that identity provider, okay? The authentication mechanisms will support multi-factor authentication, okay? So it won't just be username and password, it might be username and password and something else, okay? It might be passwordless logins using smart cards, those sorts of pieces. It'll be a modular build. We're gonna have a base operating system, okay? And then we'll plug in all of the various functions and applications that you would want to run. So as I said before, you say, I'm a Citrix shop. Okay, so you start with the Igil base, and that Citrix client, and you'll be Citrix client of choice, will plug in on top of that operating system. Okay, this will allow us to update the base, or just the Citrix, or just the Zoom, or whatever applications you have running on your environment will all be handled separately, a lot like what you might see in your phones. Okay. By continuing to increase and move the Igil, the Linux kernel that we use to newer and newer versions, okay, we continue to expand the support for new hardware, because that's going to be, that's something that we've been doing in the past, we're doing more frequently, and you'll see a lot more of that in OS 12. And then finally, we'll be moving to subscription-based licensing. Some people have grown at this, other people have been waiting for it. So we're going to be like everyone else in the industry and go to subscription-based licensing. On the UMS front, okay, we're going to be continuing to work on. We're going to work on the user, the deployment of a device. Okay, we want people to make use of Igil as simple as we possibly can. Okay, so we're going to allow people to very rapidly deploy or start to use an Igil device. Okay, you're going to have that enhanced application deployment where you reference an app store and say, okay, I want to install these applications. Okay, we've completely reworked the protocol, okay, that exists from an Igil device back to the management system. Those that you guys have been around, if you've set up any kind of HA environments, you know about our load balancers, how the cloud gateways work, and some of the challenges around the cloud gateway and having to update the cloud gateways, okay, in order to get features and functions. Okay, we're moving that whole communication where we're making it more minimal. Okay, the cloud gateway will be the cloud gateway, instead of being a series of commands that we might send to a cloud gateway and then the cloud gateway distribute that to the appropriate clients. Okay, we're going to turn the cloud gateway into more of a proxy. Okay, load balancing, we're going to separate the requirement for an Igil load balancer to allow you to use whatever load balancers that you might like to have on the front end of the UMS. Okay, we're going to continue to expand and improve the web user interface, and we're working on modern management integration. So Intune, Microsoft's device management, VMware Workspace ONE, UEM, and others that are out there. These are the management tools that people are using as their primary pane of glass for looking at all the devices they manage. Okay, we want to allow people to see Igil devices and control Igil devices from inside those environments. Okay, but still have the power of the Igil management system for configuration and deployment and what comes with that. So, and then of course, just like I said before, the UMS itself. Moving on here, we will be introducing a whole new set of cloud services. Okay, we'll introduce what we call the Igil Services Hub. Okay, part of that hub is going to be an app portal, or what is now moving to possibly be called the Igil application or app hub. Okay, working on a new onboarding service. Okay, where devices, much like the way you log into Office 365 today, you go to a common entry point where Microsoft is concerned. You log in using the browser at that point. Okay, based on your email address or your UPN, you get routed to your own company logins screen where you log in to the Microsoft environment. Kind of think maybe about how Igil might look in that environment. Okay, we're going to introduce an insight service. We have lots of devices out there. This became more important as we started putting Igil OS on more and more different kinds of hardware. It'd be really interesting to get a read on which hardware is if there's any hardware that people are having trouble with, or network cards, or whatever the case may be. We're going to start to capture data about the devices, the performance of the devices that are out there. And if you subscribe or enroll in this service, you'll be able to go in and look at the performance of your systems. There'll be a new licensing portal and a new integrated support portal that'll be more interactive, where you can actually go in and take a look at cases that you might have open. So the app portal itself, okay, it will be very much like what you know in an app store. Okay, you'll log in, you'll see all of the available applications that are the applications that are available to you. There's a mock-up of a screen. I've logged in, I've seen it. It looks a whole heck of a lot like that. Here we see another one. Okay, and so you'll pick an application there, but what's going to be very cool about it is you'll go inside the UMS itself. And when you go in and say, I want to deploy an application, you get to choose which version of those applications you'd like to deploy. So for example, today, if you wanted to upgrade the version of the VMware Horizon client, you would have to do a firmware update, or in some cases, a firmware downgrade. Okay, in the future, you'll pick the version you want to have deployed. Okay, you won't be limited to the ones that Igil has put you inside of a specific firmware version. So real excited about this. We think it matches up well with what a lot of organizations would like to be able to do. Okay, we'll also, okay, introduce this onboarding service. Okay, so when those of you who might have taken their Igil environment and set up, say, Igil RM server as a resolvable name, know that if you turn on a switch, okay, you can basically take an Igil device out of the box, put it up to hook it up to the network, okay, and have it just automatically connect and be put under management and download its configuration, okay, on first boot without any interaction. So one of the questions is, how do we go about doing this in a cloud environment, okay? So what we're going to do is basically devices will boot up, okay? They will contact a central onboarding site, okay, as its first that Igil manages and maintains and provides, okay? And then based on that device being known to your organization, we'll take that device, we'll reroute that device, okay, to your management service, as if you had deployed it on an internal network, okay? It'll be completely secure. But that idea of going to that central connecting point on the in the cloud is what's going to be key, okay, to onboarding users or devices. There'll be other cases where you want to send devices to users, okay? And now a user is going to onboard a device, okay? And the way we look at it, how can we make it as possibly as simple as we possibly can? You know, we think about, well, gee, all I really need from you is your email address. And if I have your email address, I know everything I need to know to get you routed to where to your management system, to your management tenant, where my configuration can be deployed automatically as soon as I've registered the device. So all this onboarding service is key in allowing people to be able to do this through the cloud, which is what we see in the future and what we'll be seeing with OS 12. Okay, so to kind of give you a little bit of a feeling for how this might work, okay, you're going to get an Igil device. That Igil device, okay, is going to arrive at your organization or potentially at your end user's desk or their home or wherever they happen to be. That device might ship from HP, it might ship from Lenovo, it might ship from LG. Go back to all of those hardware vendors we had when we put that up there before, and there will be more. That device shows up, the user takes it out of the box, and the first thing they do is it comes in, it says enter your email address, and that device will automatically go to that site, that cloud service that we provided, okay? And the device will automatically, based on domain or maybe MAC address of the device, okay, will be routed to your management system, okay, as we know in the past. And once it's been connected, okay, the firmware version, the firmware profile, and any kind of applications, configuration profiles, anything about the device that we need to have will automatically come down to that device, and then the system will be presented to the user for them to use. This whole process takes about 2 minutes, maybe, minute and a half. Really depends how fast, I suppose, you can type your email address. But we have a video, but I can't show my video, unfortunately. The video will show the entire process from first boot to being in a desktop in under 2 minutes. So it's a powerful, powerful service that we're going to be giving to people, as we move through 2022. Now, additionally, the Insight service. Okay, I mean, I go back to this. I do like to know, what processors do we have? How many systems are low on memory? What video cards are out there? People need to know. Knowledge is, and information is power, and knowledge is power, whatever. I mean, it's just getting in there and being able to understand everything about your edge devices, okay, and what you have from an asset standpoint, I think is a powerful option. If people are connecting to Citrix, what version of the Citrix receiver are they running? I mean, you can look at the firmware versions out there, but you're going to get a little more granular insight into what's going on. So this will be a service that'll be out there. It'll be with the data repositories, will be in the cloud. You'll be able to log in and you'll be able to analyze this and take a look at this information. This is not something that'll probably be ready. This is more of a 2023 probably kind of solution that'll be out there. It takes time to put all this together. Plus, you have to go to OS 12 and adopt all the new tools. But we think this will be very, very valuable to people. So the other thing we're going to do is, of course, I talked about integration with third-party management systems. So we've been working with VMware for really the better part of a year, okay, to start to integrate the Igil management system, okay, with Workspace ONE UEM, okay. And in order to do that, it's really a challenge to say, when VMware, we first started talking about this, VMware was saying, well, we can provide all those configuration pieces for Igil. And I said, you realize we've said 7,000, but I think today it's more like 9,000 individual configurable elements. I said, are you prepared to do that? And oh, by the way, we issue updates every quarter and sometimes more frequently, and we add features. So it's a never ending saga in terms of creating this integration. So it's a brilliant idea of creating a connector, okay, an IoT or a cloud connector, connecting a set of APIs on both sides that allows Workspace ONE UEM and Igil UMS to communicate with each other. And we've built this bridge, and now we're looking at starting to build start to add all of the configurationable elements and how we might create JSONs and other things to communicate that up along with all the commands. That's a process. That's going to take quite a while to get all of that done before we get to something that's viable. And then we're also working to there's this concept of the Workspace ONE Intelligent Hub from VMware, and we're looking at ways of using that as well to integrate Igil devices, or at least to be able to see them inside UEM, not necessarily configure them or control them in any significant way. So pretty excited about Workspace ONE. We're starting to talk to Microsoft about the same concepts, that we can do have the same approach or similar approach with Intune and MDM. And then additionally here, just kind of a review of all these things that I've shared with you, this OS 12 and this management system, okay? You and all of your users are going to have access to the Services Hub, everything that comes with it, the licensing direct to device, as opposed to being completely controlled through the UMS is where we'll take it. The Insight Engine, the onboarding service, all is going to allow you to quickly get to the major VDI providers, okay, and have access to all those cloud applications, okay, directly on that device, and bring it all together with that Igil management. This is our kind of review slide, right? And tie it into your identity provider, okay, and remote management of third parties. So it's definitely a future that we've got going on. So all of this is coming in 2022. And right now, no firm dates, so stay posted. How we doing on time, Andy?
We're good on time. David Fainer had a question. I didn't give him
Oh,
quite
yeah?
enough opportunity to interrupt. David, what was your comment or question for Jeff?
I don't remember.
Okay, no worries.
I have one, the other David.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
So will UMS 12 have an appliance?
It will not have an appliance.
Okay.
So, gonna
I
continue to add.
I remember what my question is. What is with the new cloud servers service? What is the future for ICG?
The ICG will still be a key component because it's what provides the secure connection. Okay. Now we're not initially in 2022, we're not going to have a cloud UMS, if you will. Okay, so an Igel cloud or Igel cloud UMS where the entire management system is in the cloud where it's multi-tenant. So you still have your own UMS on-prem, or you may be running your own UMS in Azure or AWS or Google Cloud or wherever. So we'll still, the ICG will still be that secure connecting point, okay, that connects the devices to the management system, okay?
So Jeff, I would pipe up and say that XenTegra as a company, as an Igel partner, does have the ability to host UMS for multiple customers at the same time, either individual UMS or a multi-tenant one. So if that's something people are looking for as Igel evolves into possibly UMS as a managed service, or excuse me, as a service, ICG as a service, or both as a service, we definitely have an answer from folks in the interim.
Cool.
Hey, Jeff, a
Go
lot
ahead.
of things covered there. How much of that was pandemic oriented, or how much of that was coming irregardless of the pandemic because the need was there?
This was coming before the pandemic.
Mhm.
You know, I mean, we've watched these cloud applications start popping up. I think, gosh, I think we probably had these conversations about this direction going back 5 and 6 years at this point. You know, we always knew what we had in the Igel UMS. We always knew what we had in the management system. But then when organizations like Salesforce and all these other companies start popping up, and then Office 365, you know, and then the ultimate, I suppose, the ultimate endorsement of the technology, you know, was Microsoft deciding that running Windows in the cloud was legitimate. I mean, all these years, Citrix was like, you know, this is the way to do things. This is the way save a lot of money. Yeah, it's expensive, but on the back end, you know, you're cutting costs 60, 70%, okay, of managing all those edge devices that you no longer have to manage. Of course, VMware comes in, but Microsoft,
I was going to say one.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say one comment. So you're going back 5-6 years ago, even more than that, really. Microsoft's approach to virtualization, and many often heard about this, the VDA tax. Oh, you want to have a thin client operating system connecting to a Windows-based whatever desktop. Well, that's going to cost you extra money, and all the. I'm not a Microsoft licensing thing, but that was a big hurdle, and it pushed a lot of, from my perspective at the time, different software company. It was sort of a roadblocker to wide adoption of VDI on-prem in a lot of cases. Fast forward several years, we started to hear more about the cloud and Citrix and Azure and all this stuff, and then of course Jed mentioned he was on stage 2 years ago when Microsoft fully embraced this, and obviously he's expanded it even further now with Windows 365 as well. So the world has completely changed in just that short amount of time. So I think this was definitely, I agree with you, it's definitely happening pre-pandemic, just only accelerated since then. And I think about where would we have been without all those data centers that have been built in the last 10 years plus from Amazon and Microsoft. It's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that was kind of a loaded question for Jeff, because what I was trying to highlight is this group, whether it's Igel, whether it's XenTegra, whether it's Doug Brown, whether it's folks like David and David from customers that we all saw something coming, whether that something was a day where you couldn't go to the office because you had a sick child or you had a doctor's appointment, or something as big as what just happened. This need to be flexible in how you do your job, but yet secure. It's that idea has been around for a long time. It's just folks like Igel had started building momentum into solving problems that have only become more and more mainstream over the last 12, 18, 24 months. It only validates. I asked the question the way I did because these are problems that were being solved prior to the world being punched in the face with the pandemic challenge.
Yes, in many cases, and really over the last few decades. I mean, this is a lot of technologies have come together, and the pandemic has accelerated the idea of doing this, of moving everything to the cloud. And we've always believed, and perhaps everybody that's listening here today is the future is everything in the cloud or some kind of cloud delivered application. It's the only thing that ultimately makes sense. I wouldn't want to be the PC sales guy or gal because we're the person who sells servers for a living, because they basically have 4 or 5 customers.
Well, you see it,
Amazon, Google, and maybe IBM and Oracle, or a few others that out there that have data centers.
Well, I mean, this is a new thing, right? There was a guy, my neighbor, growing up as a child. He sold VHS blank tapes to, media outlets. Well, that turned into DVDs, and now that's on-demand data from a service, aka a cloud.
Yeah.
If it can be, then it should be.
I mean, Jed mentioned we always think about AWS. I mean, think of all the services that are running on there. It's pretty shocking. When we were talking to Genesis this morning, and early in the week, I didn't realize this. The Genesis Cloud, for example, is all running on AWS.
Yeah.
Except now you'll be connected to Azure maybe, or running Citrix Cloud, and you might be using Genesis, and from those clouds connecting to a service that's running on another cloud. And all this stuff amazingly just works.
Right.
So,
well, and a quick promotion for XenTegra, we have our tenants inside those public clouds. We also have our own, racks within extremely secure and robust colos, because everything can't go in the public cloud, but many things should go in a cloud, whether it's public cloud or hybrid private cloud. And it's not cloud, it's clouds, right? So there's many, many different ways.
Yeah. We had who was it? I don't think it was you, Andy. It might have been one of your ex-employees or whatever, that we set up a management system with an ICG, one in Azure, one in AWS, and one in Google Cloud, all working with a single management system. And I was like, why would you do that? Well, because you can. You can sit there and it all works. Right. And there was a sense of a security around that. This idea that if Google disappeared, I still have my ICGs running. Right. So anyway,
that's actually, I'm laughing because in my demo that's coming up here, I actually have, UMS in one place in Azure, my custom partitions coming from another place in Azure. I mean, it's just laughing because it is possible. It's totally possible. So.
Yep.
Yeah, the elasticity of the clouds, the availability, the ways to rethink the architecture, it is somewhat limitless. And if you have a need that helps you solve that you couldn't solve in a brick and mortar data center in the past, welcome to 2021.
Well, let me just I was going to do a quick, although some of you may be there, but those that are new to Igel, maybe you don't know. And considering Igel, we released 1106, which is a major kind of, not a major upgrade to the OS, but a major release in the sense that we went from 05 to 06. It'll be a while before we go to 07, a few months at least. But we introduced this, and we had some new features that were there, in the sense that we've introduced multiple selections of the Zoom VDI client, because that was something that people needed. We also work with Zoom, who's now creating custom partitions that plug into 1106 and more current versions. Obviously, device trust, very impressive technology for evaluating a device, a user of a device, what that device is allowed to connect to. Device trust in the past had worked with Citrix and VMware, but it's been now expanded to work with with Microsoft and AVD and Windows 365, as well as Amazon. Lakeside is been integrated and now is working with Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365 as well. Teams continues to be, in the past, Teams was simply something that you could, offloading was something you could do with Citrix. Today, we can do it in IgilOS with VMware. We can do it with AWS Workspaces. And we now have in beta, we're Teams offloading for Azure Virtual Desktop and Windows 365. We've introduced the Conky System Monitor, which is kind of cool. You turn it on and you get a look at what's going on inside the system on the desktop, just like what you're looking at here on my screen. The Conky is extremely configurable. For those who want to get really fancy with it, you can control all sorts of aspects about what Conky displays and how it displays it, if you want to go down that route. And that's part of the IgilOS core today. So the new 1106. What we did, of course, we updated that kernel. I mentioned to you before, we updated to 5.12. I think we're going to have a private build out here that's going to take it up to 5.13 or 5.14. I can't hardly keep up anymore. But as I said before, an updated kernel always means newer hardware, newer chipsets, newer wireless. Okay, along the way, every time we have an update, as we did in 11.06.100, we put in all current security patches for the kernel and other aspects of the operating system. Okay. We also added a pre-boot authentication. So if you turn it on, okay, the Igil device boots up, and then you're going to have to put in a password or an encryption key, okay, to unencrypt the device and get it up and running. Okay. So that was a new addition, an increased security level. I haven't decided if I like it or not, but it's a feature that was requested and we've now added. So other things we added was this idea of an automatic network switch. If you've been around a while and you have people working on wireless and they come down and they plug into the network, the wireless stayed active, and you had to kind of do some magic, if you will, to turn off the wireless. People didn't want to have wired and wireless active at the same time, especially if it was two different networks, you know, because you could do some copying from one system to another system. Anyway, what we had to do manually or do with a special script is now part of the operating system, this automatic network switching. So I use it all the time. It absolutely has improved the mobility of my my laptop devices, you know, when I bring them back and I hook them into my local network. So that was added. Other things we've done here, as we continue to provide all the application updates for all the pieces that all the various agents and clients that are inside the Igil system, those have all been updated at this point at 11.06.100 and will continue to be. Okay, specific to Citrix Workspace app, we introduced 21.06. We've since issued a private build that got people to 21.09. And we're already testing 21.12, which nobody has yet. So anyway, we're committed to being, you know, kind of day one support with Citrix. Okay, and we're getting to that point with VMware as well. And we're always striving to get there with Microsoft. One of the key challenges, of course, is when we do these updates is people wanting to take that step to get to that newer version. We particularly see this in with Azure and Azure Virtual Desktop and the AVD client that we've written with Microsoft. You know, a lot of development, a lot of improvement, a lot of enhancements. We strongly encourage people to look at staying current with these applications. But part of this Workspace app, and this 21.06 in particular, was the introduction of the embedded Chromium framework. Okay. In allowing you inside the Workspace app itself to actually do the browser redirection activities. So, and then the RTME update for those that are still running Skype for Business, and I think they're still out there, that's got the latest update there as well. As I mentioned before, 21.09 is available now in a private build. Two things that were introduced in 21.09, and this is a big one, was Smart Card 2.0, which is kind of a magic virtual smart card to deal with the chattiness of smart cards. okay? And probably more importantly is the ability to define a user agent string for the workspace app application itself. So if somebody's hitting a net scaler from outside, one of the things that people want to be able to do is know it's an Igil device, know it's my device, and handle it inside the net scaler based on a user agent string. And that's now part of the workspace app. And we work with Citrix, closely with Citrix, to get that added because we have a lot of users that want to have that feature. So talked about Azure Virtual Desktop, Windows 365. I mentioned before the Teams beta is in place. It's pretty impressive. I use it all the time, and the video and the screen sharing and all the pieces that you would expect to have work quite well. We hope to start to roll this out in a more general way sometime in the first half of next year, but it's kind of dependent on Microsoft in some respects because they continue to do a lot of development on Teams for VDI environments to benefit not just Igil, but VMware and Citrix and others. So talked about, we've introduced hardware acceleration, and I mentioned before Lakeside and monitoring SysTrack and device trust. One of the things that was added, okay, was the ability to do to handle printing, okay, from AVD in Windows 365. And our client now automatically enumerates whatever printers are configured locally on an Igil device into the remoted environment. So that was a nice addition. So VMware Horizon, WebEx meetings has been updated, and then we've introduced the Microsoft Teams optimization as well. That was new in the VMware client, Horizon client. It's now part of Igil OS. And then on the Amazon side, this is the first time, okay, that anybody has shipped the Amazon Workspace client on a native operating system on a device, okay? So if you get Igil 11.06.100 or newer, part of what will be included in there is going to be the Amazon Workspace's client, okay? So their implementation of PC over IP, okay? And I mentioned before device trust. Unified communications, obviously updating WebEx. I mentioned Teams, I mentioned Zoom. We won't review those things, but they're all there. We've also, is there anybody here on this call using Applidis? It's a European company. It's a VDI solution that I've not seen over here, but if you use it, we now support it. The LRS printing agent, okay, was a high-end managed printing solution used in healthcare. It's been delayed a little bit. Obviously, this Conky system monitor, if you want to try that out, if you've not tested it, it's pretty cool. One of the other things we've introduced some new hardware. Okay, we've introduced this secure USB stick. I'm still waiting for mine. But in order, you can plug this in order to get it to boot, you have to put in a key to unlock the USB stick. So in addition to having the secure Igil OS anyway, booting from USB, now you have to have this these series of codes that you would put in here to unlock this thing. So we've introduced that. It's certified by the British Security Institute, or whatever BSI stands for. We talked about Igil already. We talked about all these hardware manufacturers that are now shipping Igil OS. So they're relisted here, and there's some others. And we talked about end computing that was sent. Doug mentioned this, that we were working with them and the Raspberry Pi and to put the Citrix Workspace Hub on there for people who want to use that end computing solution. So, and you get that from end computing. So moving forward, I mentioned we're going to go to 5.14 in the future. Okay, and one of the other things we're doing that's on our our future roadmap, if you will, is the ability to update the BIOS on your machines using the vendor firmware service. Okay, which is a cloud-based repository where HP, LG, Lenovo, and others can update firmware for Linux into this repository. And then through the management system, we'll be able to tap into that and deploy that to the devices. And you'll be able to update BIOSes through the UMS. And that'll come down the road. We're going to add support for the TPM 2.0 chip, okay, that's built into a lot of chips today, using certificates that are on there to boot the Igil device. And then, of course, we continue our relationship with Imprivata. We've had the Imprivata PrivID embedded for years, okay, but we've locked people in to PrivID embedded, and people are looking for ways to be able to work outside of that environment beyond, say, just a single Epic kind of solution, okay, but switching between apps, okay, and then we've been taking steps, and Chris Feeney's been a big part of this to say, okay, how can we use Imprivata, not necessarily PrivID embedded, but Imprivata PrivID web, okay, as a way to run in non-appliance mode. So that's something that we're working on here. And then I mentioned before about OS 12, you know, we wanted to introduce firmware updates on the background with limited bandwidth. That unfortunately has been moved to the future, and it's going to be an OS 12 feature. We hoped it would be an 11, but it's not. So that, well, I don't know, that slide shouldn't have been there, and I think that wraps it up.
So Jeff, that's it.
That is it. And time-wise, 1 minute over, it looks like. So we're
Yeah,
back
no, you
on
did great.
track.
So I don't know. Let me bring Doug in. Doug, you commented earlier in the chat window. I don't know if it was for everybody or not, but your amazement at OS 12. What's the highlight for you? What's the game changer for you that made you make that comment a while ago?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, I like the module approach, right? Is that you can build the OS. We had a few companies, customers talk about it early on, that you can sort of build just enough OS, right? And with OS 12, you can truly do that, right? Why do you need the Citrix client if you're using VMware, or the VMware client if you use Citrix, right? And then the App Store piece is the second component, right? The fact that you can, you know, get the apps you need, and then from our ecosystem, they can develop their own apps, and then boom, put those up in there. You put those two together, you have a really powerful solution.
Good question. Good comment, Jeff. Likelihood that someone could take their Linux-based app and stick it up in your app store. What kind of what do you guys expect adoption to be there?
Well, we'd love to see, you know, lots of adoption. But it's going to be very tightly controlled. So we know that there are a number of companies that we're working with today. Nutanix is one that comes to mind, which is very keen on getting Frame into Igil OS, and they're working very hard to do that. And Ron Nair is supporting that quite well. So today, working on a custom partition, which is not exactly an easy way to do it, but for them, okay, they'll be able to package their application. Okay, and we're working on an SDK, okay, where they'll be able to say, okay, here's my application, here's how you configure the application, this is how the application is described, and all these pieces. And they build this all up, and they'll sign that, and they'll provide it to us, and then we'll review it and re-sign it before it goes up on the App Store. So, but I know personally, working with a lot of the alliance partners that are out there that have various drivers, so whether it's Triceret or ThinPrint, okay, or Genesis, Zoom in particular, because I've spent a lot of time with those guys. All these companies, okay, are looking at ways, how can I get my application integrated into Igil OS? Okay, before OS 12, before the App Store, they either build a custom partition, okay, which is great, okay, but it has its challenges as you use more and more and more custom partitions, okay, or come up with this App Store concept, which is really quite brilliant. I had a chance. I was in Germany a couple of weeks ago and sat with the developers, and they showed me the technology that they're putting together, and I'm amazed. It is really significant. And what they're doing, it's complicated as complicated could be, and I feel like they figured it out. So I got an early copy of the SDK, and I have to provide them some feedback, but it's going to be brilliant, and the ability to update these independently. I mean, it's huge for end users. I mean, We've had this challenge for years, and we'll be able to do that. The trickle update, I think that is huge.
Jeff, I was thinking about this, in the end user accepting that as normal. Like this morning, I woke up, iPhone was telling me I had an update. I'm like, that's fine, I'll go ahead and update it. I had no qualms about it at all. These things are pretty normal. There might have been some app updates on my, I didn't see that happening, but the OS itself was getting updated, and that's normal. I accept that. And I think I've also seen sort of an acceptance from my days at Imprivata, authentication acceptance, right? We used to have to convince people that tapping in was a way better than typing passwords to log in. And then it became sort of norm. And then when did it become acceptable to use a phone or a push technology or something like that? Because as these things began getting more accepted. And so this idea that the OS will update itself is to my prediction is it just feels like it's just how it should have always been. It's the
way of the world. You know, I sit down and I go to bed at night. I get up the next day and I log into my desktop environment, which Microsoft is maintaining, you know, and they put updates on there. I mean, I didn't know they're just doing it. I just turned it over to them, you know. That's just a weird thing. I mean, how many times do we test and vet and test and vet and test and vet before we would push out an update? You're right, Chris, we just accept it. And all in all, you know, it's been very little problems. Been a couple times where things got a little weird. Never really could figure out what it was, but it was cleaned up the next day. So it's quite interesting.
But also having the flexibility to lock it down and manage it. So if you've got something like in a shop floor or tightly controlled, regulated environment, you may have the ability, you may need to do those things, and you still can.
Yeah,
you got it. That's what I mean by just enough OS too. You can remove the attack surfaces, right? And you can create just what you need for maybe the shop floor, but a different one for the, you know, the back office, for the admins versus the, you know, the line workers or what have you. It's perfect.
Right.
Yeah, a lot of.
I'm itching to tell my story. Jeff,
all right,
I got things that
we're going to transition over. I was going to say, Igel really hit mainstream at a time when, unlike Windows, where Windows you really needed everything in it so that everybody had everything they could ever want. Igel now can deliver real time the things you need, so you don't have to pack it all in there. And like Doug was pointing out, you know, create an attack surface that, you know, was full of stuff you don't need. It's just, XenTegra is a great example of a company that just showed up at the right time when things as a service, real-time delivery became mainstream, and we can architect in a way that embraces that from day one. Well, Chris Feeney, chomping at the bit to show us the demos and give us a hands-on or first-hand view of what Igel can do. Chris, you want to take it away?
All right, welcome. I do have Christmas decorations up at the home office here. I have some show and tell. This is one of the things I love about Igel. First of all, does anybody recognize what this might be in my hand that I'm holding up?
I think it's a power supply.
It's like an old Igel power supply.
Yeah,
it's not an Igel power supply. Technically, yes, it is a power supply, but what it really is an end user that no longer had a thing to power up her laptop. That end user happened to be my daughter, and it happened to her right before she was trying to finish up a paper at school. So this is why I love Igel. She came home, I said, bring it home, we'll figure it out. It's under warranty. I called Dell, they were very nice. But I also had an old spare laptop that I put Igel OS on. I said, just in case, I'm gonna send this back with you if we can't figure this problem out. And I got it set up for her. It's not as powerful as what she had, but it was something, and I demo it all the time. But I've got Conky on there, you know, getting crushed or whatever. It's got Edge on here so she can get it to Office, and she ended up not getting back. But this is the best part about it. I called Dell. They said the part is on back order. I'm like, come on, it's a freaking power supply. Well, I ended up ordering one on Amazon, and while we're in this webinar, Amazon's delivery got there 10 minutes before Dell's delivery. So she's got 2 power supplies now to take care of that problem. But the best part is, like I said, Igel is one of these things that this is an old Dell thin client that I could literally turn into a kiosk browser thing or whatever. this is going to the dump here locally if I really wanted to, but it might go to Andy instead and let him do something with it if he can.
We can. Any e-waste, send it. We want it.
This right here is probably going to go to Andy as well. It's an old Dell laptop with a 500 gig, spinning hard drive, 6 gigs of RAM, and a CD-ROM DVD actually. But it runs Igil just fine on a UD Pocket or locally, but you don't need all that hard drive. And this is a state-of-the-art LG Gram that I run a UD Pocket on. I've also got some other OSs on here, and the user experience, obviously a little bit more newer, but one operating system, one management tool, and I don't really necessarily care what the BIOS is on each one of these things because I can handle all of that through this. And so what we're going to show you today, kind of a back to the future. You saw the excitement that's happening in the future here coming in 2022, but show you what it looks like now if you haven't seen it. So I'm going to share my screen, and my buddy Ron is going to show you some of the cool stuff after I get through sort of a little walk and shout. So do you see my screen here with Igil workspace on it? Make sure you got the right screen up. So I'm going to minimize this for just a second. So this is my cloud hosted Igil UMS server. I happen to be running it on Windows. I could run it on Linux if I wanted to, but the infrastructure is provided by our friends at Microsoft. And I've got a virtual machine. I also have this laptop here that I showed you earlier. All can be managed here. And so the device currently, I'm going to show you what it looks like in a second. But let's walk through. Today, the management system, as others have mentioned, it's kind of unwieldy, right? I mean, there's a lot of things here, 7,000 possible settings, but you can organize this in a lot of ways. But for those that maybe haven't familiar with managing devices, let's just break it down, right? Profiles in the world of Igil is equivalent to group policy settings in the world of Microsoft. Configuration settings, such as time and date, background, wallpaper, other things like that, Citrix, VMware, whatever. And so we break it down and we have these things that can control this. Now, if you look at how Igil is configured modularly, we break it up into sessions, accessories, user interface. And so if I pull up an Igil machine, here's my Igil device, more or less kind of out of the box, very little configured on it, shows that it's licensed and everything, and it's connected into this management console. And this is, standard configuration. Nice little Igil community logo there if you weren't paying attention. So here's the local setup. Let's kind of compare side by side. And this is the best part. I love this. I'm taking a page from when Jeff Kahlberg first showed me Igil, and he kind of compared it this way, right? So if you look at the local setup on this device, and if I take this profile that I just created to enable Conky, and by the way, if you hadn't noticed, I'm the nephew that got Jed sick, by the way. Sorry, Jed. Just kidding. We both got sick from different people. But it's broken down, as I mentioned, sessions, accessories, user interface. And so this is where all this stuff lives inside of Igil. And so if I bring up, you can kind of see. So that's how we've broken down how to manage Linux, how to make it easier to manage. And now it's obviously, again, with OS 12 and UMS 12, it's going to get a whole lot easier. But behind the scenes, that's what's being controlled. And so what you're going to see here, I'm going to take this device, let me close this out. And right now it lives in a section inside of my UMS. So these are my configuration settings. This device is where the devices would actually live. And then these directories is what we call them, would be the equivalent of an organizational unit in Microsoft's world of Active Directory. And in OU, you can apply policies, and you can have subdirectories which inherit things. So if you look at this staging directory where this device currently resides, there's not much assigned to it. I've got some firmware updates. This tells me where I need to point to, in my case, the cloud, to get all my firmware updates. And then I've got a setting for the base RM server. So just very little configured on this. If I click on the device itself, it gives me a little bit more information, all of which I can kind of maybe go to a report or view and pull this out. But I'm going to drag this device into this directory here for me, and it's going to assume a new configuration. So if I do that right now, I can say, yeah, I really want to do that. Do I want to do the changes now or at next reboot? And I'm just going to say now. And so this device is going to move down here. You can kind of see the device got the action. And this device is being managed by my ICG. So here it goes. In about 3 seconds, it's going to start changing the look and feel of the operating system. And this is how simple it can be. Now imagine, as Jeff showed you earlier, somebody booting up Igil for the very first time, authenticating, and then getting under management, and then the configuration all of a sudden consumes, and you see this custom wallpaper, you see the icon change, you see things show up, and now they can get to their workspace, what have you. And so you can do this. You can make this your corporate logo. You can brand it. However, there's a lot of really, really cool things you can do by being able to manage this. And this little icon here, this cloud, tells me that. I mean, honestly, anywhere this device could be in the world that has an internet connection, it can be managed by Igil. That's the power of the solution that we have. So, but UMS, there's a lot of functionality that is in our current Java console. That's what this is based on. But we have been porting a lot of newer functionality into the UMS web app. So if you haven't had a chance to check that out, I would definitely recommend it. You would need at least 9 gigs of RAM on your server. We would probably recommend anywhere between 10 and 12 to have a really good user experience. But there's some really cool functionality that keeps getting added into UMS versions as we port new features into that from what's in Java. So I don't know if anybody has on the webinar today is using the web app, but certainly if you have experience that you want to share with it, we'd love to hear it. But the other things that you can do is Igil is set up. So from a licensing perspective, we're connected currently to our cloud environment. So when you register your licensing or you buy licensing, it connects into the Igil license portal. And that is, for us, it's hosted in the cloud, and we communicate it securely over that. And then as I add new licenses or devices leave or whatever, maybe that Dell thin client I held up earlier, maybe it ultimately just dies and I can't use it anymore. I can take that license and move it to some other device. It's portable in that regard. And so if I renew my licenses, they'll get automatically updated into the portal, and it just automatically syncs up here with the UMS. There's a whole bunch of other stuff under the hood, as you might imagine. The cloud gateway, for example, the directory rules. So this is some really cool stuff. If I wanted to take a device, bring it into the system and have it automatically go into a location where it begins picking up some functionality, that's what those directory rules can do. And that's essentially kind of the functionality that you'll see take place in the new OS 12. It'll be recognized, and by some identifying information, it'll say, okay, this device needs to go here. And then it'll start picking up that configuration that I showed you a minute ago. So I'm going to pass the ball over to my buddy Ron Nair. He's going to show you some really cool stuff that we've been doing with custom partitions, that's sort of the precursor to this app store. But Ron, let me pass it over to you so you can take it away and show some of the cool stuff we've been doing.
All right, can you guys hear me?
We can.
Yes, sir.
Sure, cool, excellent. Let me share my desktop here. So as Chris was showing, what I've got up here on the screen is a couple examples of setup with custom partitions. I've got things set up with like Zoom and Teams, Slack and Signal and Spotify, etc., built out for that. I can also run the UMS console and just fire that up from within here as well. What I want to do is I'm going to switch over to my other system here, and what I've got set up on this is tied into, you can see the little cloud over here, so it's tied into our cloud gateway. And then we have things configured for custom partitions for Microsoft Edge, Teams, Zoom, WebEx, for example. So if I go into Microsoft Edge, I can go into my Office, I can fire up my Outlook, whatever, and just be in there going for that. So that was kind of the gist. If we go over and look at how we built a lot of those things, we have the Igil community on GitHub, and we have stuff in here. So we have PowerShell tied to our APIs, and there's stuff there. There's Igil docs, so different documentations that kind of, there isn't something on the Igil knowledge base. We've got additional content here around like how to collect hardware information for a device, or if you're on a Mac, how to build a UD Pocket or a thumb drive, et cetera, those kind of things there. And then also in the custom partitions, what we've got here is basically, there's some videos here of how to build a custom partition for Teams or Zoom, or how to do multiple ones. But the basic gist in the source, if I was to go into Teams, for example, basically there's just a little build script. You take this build script, put it on your Ubuntu system, and in like 42 seconds or so, you've got your custom partition built and ready to drop into your environment and distribute out. So that was really the quick thing there. I thought maybe now I just open it up to questions.
So Ron, I've heard you mentioned custom partition for Teams and Zoom, and then we also talked a little bit with Jeff a while ago about that stuff being built in. When if it's in the OS natively, when and why would I do a custom partition? Just looking for some education there.
Yeah, well, as Jeff was talking about with 12, it'll be more modular in how it rolls out. Right now, for example, if it's built in, you've got to wait for the next build to occur. But if you need to do something sooner, you can do it in a custom partition. Most of the things, like for example, Teams or Zoom, they're kind of like what we've got built in natively in the Igil OS is tied into your VDI backend, for example. So for example, if you wanted to have a custom partition for Zoom and run it natively on the endpoint, you could do that for like a business continuity or DR. For example, if something were to happen and there's some issue with the backend stuff, to get higher availability or higher number of nines of availability for business continuity, you could, if something was out in the back end, you could push this out or already have it pushed out, but maybe hide the icons. And then if there is an outage or some issue, all you would have to do is, change a quick setting in the UMS and push that out to everyone in a minute. Then their icons would appear on the desktop, and it's just like, just click on the Zoom icon on your desktop and continue if there was some issue with your backend infrastructure, for example.
Yeah, so help educate me for a minute. So the Zoom and Teams optimizations, those are in the Igil OS in a virtual world by default. Are the actual FAT applications in there by default, or just the optimizations? Oh, there you go.
Just the optimizations and kind of that focus for getting to the VDI, backend. So these custom partitions, if there's a requirement to have that. So for example, we've worked with some manufacturing customers where they want to have their SCADA controllers and stuff like that. And they're like, hey, Igil would be a great endpoint just to run it on. We just got to build this custom partition for it. So for example, if we went back, automation. So what we did in the custom partition stuff here, if I was to go into apps, I could look at, someone had something that they wanted to do for app space, to have a digital signage stuff, right? They just wanted to run it natively on the endpoint. So we built the custom partition for that. You could just go in here into app space and run that. We had other things where inductive automation for the controllers for the factory floor, they wanted to run those natively. So we just went in there. If you look at this, you see about 6 months ago, we put this together. And again, a little build script here, which would, in less than a minute, take the application and get it set up to run natively on the Igil endpoint. So,
and you may have said this, it may have come out when Jeff was speaking. I kind of alluded to it earlier, but if there's a Linux app, there's really no reason why you can't build a custom partition and bring it into Igil. Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So for example, like HP and their XenTegra remote boost. So we had an animation studio that wanted to, send the users home, and they wanted to get into their high-end HP workstations to do the animation. So they needed this one built. So here it is right here. Again, the users are left, you can just run the build script, similar flow, and in a minute you have your custom partition built for that and distribute it and go.
Yeah. And I assume you guys are seeing that the future of Linux applications is going to become more and more common.
Yes.
Yeah, you're seeing a lot of, especially cloud-based vendors where they offer multiple clients. Linux is starting to show up more and more.
Yeah.
Same thing for Nutanix Frame. When we worked with them as part of the Igil Ready program and stuff like that, until it's integrated into the OS, you have this thing here in a little builder. Again, You can go in here, take this builder and have the latest version of the Nutanix frame built in, about a minute, and you've got the custom partition built. Think about it this way. I mean, right now, how it's going is before the App Store, you would have to, if you wanted to do something and you didn't have this, you would have to, request from Igel to build a custom partition, stuff like that. Well, think about in the Windows space, you wouldn't go talk to Microsoft and say, hey, could you package, an Office app, or package any app, right? You just say, you have all these different ISVs out there, grab the app, install it and go. So that's what you're going to really see with Igel 12. And that's why we kind of put this together here, knowing that 12's coming, but, I don't know, Jeff, if you've got any other thoughts or comments. Calvert, you're on mute, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead, say it again.
Oh, no, what I was saying was just what we've got here with the custom partitions and what we're doing and how things roadmap to 12. We'll have APIs and stuff in 12 to build partitions,
Right.
but we still envision that there would be these custom partitions and things like this as well.
Yes. So the custom partitions, obviously will be supported as legacy items because there are a lot of people that have built custom partitions. Okay, but at the same time, we could take that same custom partition, okay, and I doubt that because the custom partitions will vary in terms of their initialization scripts, it won't be as simple as creating a tool to migrate a custom partition to an app. But the basis of the custom partition will make it very easy to package the custom partition as an application for deployment from our app store or from the app hub. So we will support them, but there'll be a lot of encouragement to move them into app store type apps.
Yeah, by the mainstream vendors. But if a customer has a need,
Customer
for a
has their
one-off,
own, so the customer has their own unique one-off. Okay. It'll be very difficult, at least the way it is today. Initially, it would be very difficult for them to create an app store kind of application. So the custom partition will be there to support those deployments. Okay. In time, it's been a discussion. We realized, even though we're putting this cloud service out there, we realize that some people will need to host their own app store. Okay, their own repositories for the apps and for firmware updates, even the partial updates, everything. Okay, so we've been discussing that and we'll be providing support for that. We also recognize that some customers have written their own applications and for deployment inside their organization. Okay, these will need to be signed, okay, and in order to be deployed through the UMS, okay, but the customer can sign their own applications for deployment in their environments. But they wouldn't be able to provide an application, say, to share with another customer. Unless they brought them in and put them under their management and some other things.
But Jeff, I just want to highlight for the group. I mean, Igel is a rapidly growing, fast-moving company that still is thinking about customers and their needs and facilitating that. There's a couple other players on the market here, but none that have this customer first. I see your need before or in parallel to you seeing your need. I'm enabling a path forward, whether you realize it's a need for you yet or not.
Correct.
Okay, Chris, Ron, anything else you want to show off?
No, I think that's it for me, Chris, unless you've got something else.
No, I was looking for questions in the chat. I don't see
Well, there's
anything.
the one Jeremy Green asked, and it's been a little bit while. I'm sorry we didn't get to it earlier, about a new Horizon client and Kalberg, Jeff Kalberg.
Okay. Yeah, so I was going to type back in, but since you brought it up, I'll just answer it verbally at the moment. So obviously, Horizon client for ARM, okay, or for the Raspberry Pi is really that lies with VMware. We know that they have maybe developed about 80% of a Horizon client for ARM. I don't think it's anything that's publicly available or any kind of official capacity. It is not, last we talked to them about it, it's not supported. in any kind of way. So we're not going to integrate it into Igil OS. That being said, we've had some questions come from some other people, some other manufacturers, looking at chips and shortages and looking at new products in the future. And a lot of phones are built on ARM, and said, could we have a laptop device built on ARM? So at least one of the major manufacturers in the world is questioned whether or not, has asked the question. I said, if we have an ARM mobile device, could we put Igil OS on it, and would it support Citrix, VMware, Amazon, Microsoft? So we'll be talking to those players about that, and what their plans are, and get an update on it. But right now, no plans for us to include it until VMware provides an official Horizon client that we could deploy.
Yeah, and that's a simple answer, right? Because if they don't have it, then you can't have it, or maybe you could, but then who's going to support it? And you're just chasing your tail the whole time. And that's where you guys have been with Citrix all these years of providing multiple versions and working directly and with Citrix on a daily, if not weekly, if not daily basis. That's something you guys are doing with your pulse on the space that the others are very more distant from the manufacturers, the vendors than you guys are. You're hand in hand trying to figure out how you go to market together all the time.
Correct.
This isn't something you guys do as a side business. It is your business. You're not a rounding error in some massive company that, let's leave it at that.
Andy, we've talked about this before. I think I was just thinking about this. As people are looking at the landscape, right? Often they think about getting that back end thing set up first, but they often forget about, at the end of the day, that back end needs to be accessed from the user and that endpoint. And I know your organization does a really good job of this, but bringing the endpoint experience up front to the conversation. Yes, the world is going to the cloud. You may be hybrid cloud, full cloud, on-prem, whatever it is. But if you don't get the user experience right, do you need a laptop? Do you need a thin client with a webcam like I'm using? What is that user experience? Do you need to offload Teams, Zoom, whatever? You get all that figured out, and then you can craft the endpoint solution. And very often you can repurpose a whole lot of machines that are Core i7s, Core i5s that are way more powerful thin clients than one coming from the factory in some cases. Yeah. So a lot of great options. Just put it all out there and then think through, where Igil hopefully can help you out. So.
And when it comes to something like Igil that's this close to our space, you can pretty much bet that when you get there, even if you didn't include the endpoint in your conversation, you're going to be covered.
Are there any more questions from the gallery? I'm looking. I don't see anything in the Q&A section, unless I'm missing. No.
Let me go back to share my screen and my Q&A or my official slide for this. But guys, I want to thank you guys for joining. Not sure how I did that, but yeah, as Chris was saying, if there's questions, now's the time. You can easily follow up with this group at a later date, and we can help address some of those. I'm struggling with my driving skills here, but just to recap, Igil, XenTegra are very close partners. XenTegra does things that others won't. We're driven and led by a bunch of engineers and consultants, doing assessments because we truly want to get engaged with customers and add value. Doing our webinars and our podcasts and our hands-on workshops and even boot camps that we've done in the past. Being focused on vendors that we think solve problems and being the best at being that vendor partner. It's a different mindset, but it's how we think, right? We've got technologies that are good for our customers. Let's go do our best to get those marketed and sold and implemented and maintained. It's something that kind of drives us to be a better partner for our customers as well as the vendors that we represent. And finally, as Doug was alluding to a while ago, conferences. We hope to get back in front of conferences, get back to conferences this year. We've already got a few that we're planning for. I will be spending 6 figures or more buying conference passes for customers that we work with and customers that we want to work with. No better time to get to know somebody and how they think and how they work than at a conference. Plus, we get to have a lot of fun. If you've never been around Doug and team and his community at a conference, you're missing out. And I'll just highlight on those, Microsoft Ignite, Citrix, Synergy, VMworld, ServiceNow, Amazon reInvent, which is happening this week. Those are some of the examples, but not limited to those conferences and things that if you're trying to attend those and you're like I was back when I was a sysadmin and just frustrated that it had to be such a difficult ask of your leadership to get that conference pass handled. Those are areas where we try to help and be value add to our community. I brought this up earlier. I'll bring it up again. If you are interested in using an Igel device, either an ARM-based RX 420 or maybe some other device, an LG or something, or a Igel UD Pocket or all the above, reach out to that email address there, the info@XenTegra.com, and let us know, and we'll get you one of these for you in your hands to play with. Reminder, we are giving away this Bronco in 2022 or something like it. I can't help the chip shortage and the amount of time it's taken to get one, but the plan is by the Citrix Synergy timeframe, we plan to give this thing away. So if you haven't already done so, go ahead and register for this thing and expect to see something magical, some type of magical big giveaway from us every year. I just love finding ways to give back for the success that we have, and it's a great way to get in touch with customers. The panel, guys, any other questions or comments that you want to bring up before we kind of adjourn here?
I thank you, Andy. This is really great, and I love what you guys are doing. From the perspective of sharing all this great information with the customers and anybody really that wants to join. So kudos to you.
Well, thanks, Doug. And Igel's got a lot to do with our success, both as a partner as well as a mentor. We showed up as disruptive forces right at the same time. We get the benefit of a modern world that sees the value in what we're doing, and getting together and building valuable concepts and going to market with those concepts in such a way that it's seen truly as a value add. They kind of go hand in hand. All right. Well, with that, guys, thank you for joining, and appreciate your time today. And we'll look forward to doing this again online, but ideally, hopefully, without a doubt, in person sometime in 2022.
I can't wait.
All right. Thanks all.
Thanks, Andy.
Andy.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day.
All right. Bye.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Deutschland. Tschüss.
Cheers.